Morning. Time change sucks. I hate it. I hate it so much. And this is I forgot. Sorry. Okay, I forgot to mute my channel. um, and this is the worst one. This is the one where you lose an hour. I hate time change. Why do they have to do it? Why? And this is daylight savings time. And this is the one I hate because it's daylight longer. And you get this false sense of earliness, and then all of a sudden it's bedtime. I'm doing stuff. Why is it bedtime already? I don't understand. The sun is up. The sun was just up. Why is it bedtime? They need to do away with this crap. What state is it that doesn't have to do this? There's a state that doesn't do this. How do they function with all the other states changing time? It's not fair. Okay, that is my rant for this morning. Am I live? Are we doing this? I am so discombobulated because of the time change. Okay. Believe it or not, I have everything lined up and ready to go this morning. Let's just hope that StreamYard cooperates. We are going to be the first person we're going to hear from this morning is the 911 operator.
Yes, Your Honor. I think Messrs. Jackson and Dixon and myself need a ruling from the court on the objection to the objection this morning to the tape recorder message.
The people haven't sought to put it in, as far as I understand.
We're seeking to put it in now.
Okay.
I told them at the break, the only, I was waiting until the witness was finished, until full cross-examination, redirect, recross, all of that stuff.
Okay.
It is my considered opinion that the door was open, that in fact it does become relevant. Mr. Rosen on cross-examination asked if about the demeanor of the defendant, whether or not he was a nice guy, whether he gave her wine and gifts and was cordial and pulled out chairs and opened the doors and things of that nature. And I then followed up with Ms. Jennings and asked, is there any difference to that demeanor? For instance, when he acted the way he acted in the Carlisle Hotel or otherwise. And she said, absolutely. There were times when he would snap. And I said, was one of those times when he left messages on your phone machine? And she said, yes, that's a good example of one of those times when he just snapped and he was a different Phil Spector. We're asking to play that tape for its for that value for the jurors.
Mr. Rosen?
Your Honor, I once again renew my objections this morning. And actually now I think the defense position is a little bit stronger, Judge, because again, this is dated December 24th, 94. The Carlisle alleged incident occurs in January of 95. It is post, not pre, to these phone calls. There is, I understand Mr. Jackson's argument on this, okay? But it's not, the substance, the body of the calls is not tied to that incident in any way. There's nothing in the record to suggest what this is about, and I think it's highly prejudicial. So I'm going to ask the court again, materiality grounds, relevancy grounds, and 352 exclude.
Thank you.
My only response to that would be, Your Honor, this leaves, I think the cross-examination has systematically attempted to leave the jurors with a false impression, a patently false impression about the nature of Mr. Spector's relationship with Stephanie Jennings. She opined, sorry, I'll take that back. She testified, not her opinion, but she testified directly that she saw him in circumstances wherein he would snap and turn into a different person. That goes to the heart of what we're trying to establish here. she was cross-examined on that point, on that very point, in an effort to say, hey, look, this is the kinder, gentler Phil Spector, and you knew him to be a genteel soul, if you will. He bought you gifts, and we've seen, indications of little cards with raccoons, baby raccoons on them, et cetera, et cetera. That is a false impression that's being left with the jurors. We have specific, authenticated evidence that corroborates what Stephanie Jennings said, which is, at any moment, he could snap and turn into a different person. Usually, that was when alcohol was involved, and I think the tape speaks for itself that he even sounds inebriated on the tape.
I think I'd have to hear the tape to see if that part is relevant. Mr. Rosen?
Yes, if I may respond briefly. With great respect for Mr. Jackson, because I have great respect for him, and I have great respect for Mr. Dixon, he's making the argument of the court that this will leave the jury with a false impression, and I think that may be a bit off the mark. The impression the jury is going to get is going to be whatever impression they come away with based on the credibility of this witness. And certainly, one impression they may come away with is, as he spoke to a moment ago. Another impression they may come away with is they may decide that they don't believe any of the items or any of the evidence that was adduced on cross-examination and only accept the direct. And in that case, you have exactly the flip side of the argument, which I didn't make, and I purposely didn't make it because none of us know what the jury is perceiving at the moment they're hearing the evidence or what they're going to do months from now when they decide to go into the jury room and deliberate on this matter. So the point is, I don't think it does create a false impression. It creates an impression. What kind of impression it creates is up to the jury to decide and put a label on it, okay? But there's certainly enough evidence in this case that they could conclude exactly the opposite. They could say, we didn't pay any attention to what Mr. Rosen brought out on cross-examination. We believe that Mr. Spector should be cast in a bad light. So it's not, I think, appropriate to make an argument that all that's left is a false impression, because it's not. You sat and heard the evidence. You heard the testimony of Ms. Jennings this morning, and certainly it's susceptible to a number of interpretations. It's not just one. And the problem you have with this, and I understand you want to hear, I just will say one last thing. And the problem you have with it is, again, the date. If this was after the fact, and somewhat closely after the fact, there'd be no foundation argument on this. But it's not. It predates the incident by almost 2+ weeks. So there's no foundation. We don't know what this applies to. We don't know what it's over. It could have been over a very innocent thing. The government assumes that these words that appear in these messages are based on something bad, something sinister. It may not be. It may be a perfectly appropriate reason why this was said, which has nothing to do with the government's theory. So the court, I think, should listen to the tape and then decide what's appropriate.
Where's the witness at this time?
The foundation, she's gone. The foundation for the tape has already been established.
Well, I understand that. She talked about threatening calls and whatnot, but I think we need her to put this in context. At this point, I'm not going to rule on this. I'm just going to defer a ruling. One, until I have a chance to listen to the tape, which I'm not going to do on the jury's time. And number two, I think either by offer of proof or by the witness, I need to put this into context as to what this refers to. She has testified, not specifically. I need some more information to determine relevance and then weigh it against 352. So I think we're a little short on facts.
Your Honor, the offer of proof, and I'll leave this with the court, and I realize you don't want to do this on the jury's time, and I don't mind, that's fine. With regard to the offer of proof, Mr. Rosen is under the impression, and part of the messages, there are two messages that we seek to play. I'm not so sure Mr. Rosen is correct about the date. Ms. Jennings would indicate, I believe if she was asked, that these tape recordings came as a result of, do you remember her testimony about being invited to a birthday party and she stood Phil Spector up?
Yes.
This was in response to that, which was actually not 1994, it was 1996. And that was my impression of when these tape messages were left. And even though I think there are 3 different messages, one of them, and they were just all on the same machine, one of them predates the incident, which I'm not interested in. The last 2, which are the more threatening of the 3 messages, as a matter of fact, one of them is not even from Phil Spector, one's from his assistant or something. The last 2 that are in his voice post-date the incident and came right on the heels of her standing him up at the birthday party a year later in 1996, I believe.
Well, folks, let me. This is taking too much of the jury's time, and I'm going to stop it. you need to at least talk to your witness and be prepared to make a very specific offer of proof with some specific dates, and that will help me make a determination, and I can listen to the tape at some point.
That's fine.
In the meantime, I'd like to move forward with the
That's
jurors.
fine.
Yes,
We
Mr. Dixon.
just have a moment because she may have left the building and I need to try to stop.
All right,
She's not out of the city yet.
Okay.
She's just left the building.
all right.
So we'll,
In the meantime, can we proceed with another witness?
we can.
All right, let's bring in the jurors.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please be seated in the witness.
They're going to call her back just to authenticate some voicemails? Oh, I would be so mad if I was her. She's going to be like, dang it, I thought I got rid of this thing.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Vicky Daniels Matthews. First name spelled capital Vickie. Last name capital Daniels hyphenated Matthews, capital Matthews.
Thank you very much, and you may proceed. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, apparently we're having a problem with the air conditioning. You're used to it. Okay. We're working on it. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, do you prefer Miss Daniels Matthews or Miss Matthews?
Miss Matthews is fine.
Okay, thanks. That'll cut some of the syllables down a little bit. Miss Matthews, tell us what you do for a living, please.
I am a police communication technician for the New York City Police Department.
How long have you been so employed?
I've been so employed at the New York City Police Department for 17 and a half years.
And did we ask you to join us from Manhattan, as a matter of fact, to come out here to California, explain a couple of police records?
Yes, you did.
All right. What do your duties include as a communications technician for the NYPD?
As a communications technician, I am a 911 operator first, dispatcher second, and a sprint tech third.
Most of us probably know what a 911 operator is. What is a sprint tech?
A sprint tech is a technician who handles all the sprints that come in from the 911 calls for a specific date, day, and time.
And so that begs the next question. What is sprint?
Sprint is a special police report network terminology.
Okay, so it's an acronym,
Yes.
and it doesn't mean Sprint like the telephone company.
No, it does not.
It has nothing to do with that.
No, it does not.
Okay. Were you asked, or was someone in your department asked to search for any and all records of an incident that occurred on or about January 13th, 1995 at the Carlisle Hotel in Manhattan involving one Philip Spector?
Yes, they were.
Tell me how that search is conducted for these kind of archived records.
That search is conducted through Sprint. I'm on the microfiche. We search through the date and the year and the specific location that is given to us by either the attorney, the DA, detectives, or police officers that come for the Sprint.
The way that the Sprint network is set up, that communications network is set up in New York, is it possible, if you're given the proper date and time and location of an event, is it possible to go back and check for logs that are kept pursuant to a 911 call?
That is correct.
In the normal course of business, Ms. Matthews, how are logs created? For instance, if someone calls 911 and says, hey, you know what, there's a big dog in my yard and I need a police officer to come out there and get that dog out of my yard, is there some kind of a call some kind of a log that is created if in fact a unit or 2 units or 5 units are dispatched out to that yard to get rid of the dog?
Yes, it is.
Describe that in detail for us. How does that work?
Well, when the operator receives the call, she states police operator. She gives the operator number. She asks where the location is and what borough they're calling from and what type of call or what incident is going on or what's the emergency. Then while she's getting the information from the person on the other end, it is typed into the system.
And are there shortcuts, if you will, as the operator is typing something into the system?
As a trained 911 operator, we are trained for 7 weeks to use abbreviations.
Are you familiar with those abbreviations?
Yes, I am.
So if called upon to do that at the judge's request in just a few minutes, could you in fact interpret or interpolate some of those abbreviations?
Some of the abbreviations are MW, male white,
Okay,
CC, child caller,
okay,
SFC, C, female complainant,
I see.
MB, male black.
So there are various,
Sorry.
that's okay. There are various abbreviations just to make your life a little easier and quicker and more efficient when you're sending information out to a patrol unit, correct?
That is correct.
And is that information then sent over the airwaves or otherwise to an actual screen or something like that in a patrol car?
What happens is once the 911 operator receives the information from the person on the other end, the caller, it is then entered into the computer and sent to the dispatcher, who then talks with the units in the field, that is in the patrol cars or on the streets.
Okay, so the dispatcher is reading what's being typed in. The dispatcher then verbally relates to the responding units, male white, 30 years old, big dog in the yard, something like that.
That is correct.
Okay. And those logs are kept, those incident logs are kept and recorded by job number, is that correct?
That is correct.
And are those job numbers kept in the ordinary course of business as a...
Wow, you can really tell she takes her job seriously. I mean, no shade. I'm just like, she is by the book, which is a good thing.
unique number assigned to a particular 911 call?
Yes, they are.
Were you able to successfully find the incident logs, or the sprint logs as you call them, with regard to an incident that occurred at about 6:20 in the morning on January 13th, 1995, emanating from the Carlisle Hotel located at 35 East 76th Street in New York, specifically the borough of Manhattan?
That is correct.
Well, that was a mouthful, wasn't it?
Yes.
If you disagreed with me, I don't think I could have repeated that. Was this a 911 emergency call, ma'am?
Yes, it was.
Did you recover those logs and provide them to the district attorney's office here in Los Angeles?
Yes, we did.
I want to show you a document. As a matter of fact, I'll show you the actual document. We'll place a copy of the document on the overhead, but with the court's permission, I've shown this to counsel. I'm holding what appears to be a 2-page, 8.5 by 11 photostatic copy with some writing on it. The writing on the first page is simply the letter A. The writing on the second page includes B, C, and D, and this purports to be an incident record listing by job number. And I'll ask for and it appears to be a Sprint ID number or Sprint incident record. May I have this marked as, the compilation document marked as people's next in order?
6, so marked.
I'll place a P6 on the first and second page on the reverse. May I approach the witness briefly?
You may.
Thank you. Ms. Matthews, tell me if you recognize the document, the 2-page document that I've just set in front of you.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that particular document?
I recognize the document by the sprint number, the location, and the date is given, and the title on top that says incident record listing of job number.
All right. Just to familiarize us with what it is that we're looking at, because none of us have ever seen anything like this before, there appears to be a bunch of typing on this particular document. How do you read this? In what chronological order would you read these sections on the document that appear to be broken into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections?
We read them according to the location and the job number that we find it by.
Okay. Do you see the letter A on the bottom right? And I'm going to call it a block. I don't know what other word to use for it. That bottom right block that's being highlighted right now. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you recognize that incident number or incident record?
Yes, I do.
Is that an incident record that specifically relates to the incident at about 6:23 in the morning, beginning at about 6:23 in the morning, a 911 call that emanated from the Carlisle Hotel?
Yes, it does.
Okay. The reason that we have you here, Ms. Matthews, is pretty simple. I need you to read to us what that document means. There's a lot of abbreviations that we may not be able to read. Starting with the time, can you tell what time and place this incident record indicates the 911 call was made?
Okay, the time that it came in is 06:23 hours. That's military time. It's 06:23 a.m. our time.
All right. So that's 6:23 in the morning, correct?
That is correct.
Looking about midway down in that block, if you will, the highlighted block, do you see a job number okay, let's start with so we know what we're talking about, where it says 212-744-1600. Do you see that in about the middle of the page right there?
Yes, I do.
Okay, just for reference, let's move beneath that and tell me, or to the left of that rather, and tell me if you recognize something that says FC Jennings.
Yes, I do.
Okay, what does that mean?
Female caller Jennings.
All right, would the Jennings portion be the name of the female caller?
That is correct.
All right. It indicates under that some information about duplicate job number and then some, it looks like codes beneath that. And then there's a time, 0623. And to the right of that appears to be some kind of coding as well. Could you interpret that for us?
Okay, as I explained before, the 06:23 a.m. military time and 6:23 a.m. our time, that's the time, and all the other stuff is computer generated. I have no knowledge of that.
And is it important insofar as the incident log and recording the events of the 911 call, or is that just a computer-generated number and series of letters that is not necessary for your interpretation of this particular call?
That is computer-generated numbers and letters, which is not necessarily for us to interpret this point.
Starting to the right of that, where it says room 3307, could you read to the right as we're going from left to right? And then I'm assuming it breaks down back on the line beneath it and read it left to right as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, could you read that for us and tell us what that means?
It says room 3307, 33rd floor, call back 212-744-1600.
And I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. Is there an address on this block telling where that call is coming from?
The address is 35 East 76th Street between Madison Avenue and Park Avenue.
Okay. Do you see where it says Carlisle Hotel?
Yes, I do.
Okay, is that the address for the Carlisle Hotel?
That is correct.
All right, I missed that just a second ago. You see how good I am at reading these things. Going back to the callback number, how do you read the SFC, Stephanie Jennings, how do you read that going from left to right?
C, female complainant, Stephanie Jennings.
Is that again a reference to the name of the caller?
That is correct.
Then what does WPN involved mean?
WPM means weapons, abbreviation for weapon involved.
And to the right of that, can you continue reading from left to right?
MW for male white, in the room now.
And what does that tell you?
That the male white is in the room now.
In the room, meaning room 3307.
That is correct.
And what about to the right of that? ORP.
That's short for operator.
All right. And that's an indication, the 1430-12 is an indication of which operator is typing in this information?
That is correct.
All right. Moving to the line beneath that, moving to the right, past the computer-generated code portion where it starts FEM. Could you read from left to right what those abbreviations mean, please?
FEM is abbreviation for female. ABT is abbreviated for about 20 years old, crying, states the door is locked, states he is standing by the phone, states please use caution.
This is information that the 911 operator is receiving from the caller, the female caller or female complainant, Stephanie Jennings, correct?
That is correct.
Let's move to block B. And I believe that's going to be on the second page of People 6, correct?
That is correct.
And as soon as you have that in mind, then we'll go ahead and highlight that on the overhead as well. Do you see that?
Would you like me to read from the paper or the?
No. We're going to go ahead and highlight that. I'm sorry. We're going to go ahead and enlarge that whole thing so we can all read along with you. You need just a second? Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to go ahead with the court's permission so we don't use any more of the jury's time and just have the witness read from the original.
That's fine.
If we can get the computer glitch. Someone tells me the air conditioner's not working for Sudi a lot more than it's not working for the rest of us right now. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you. I'm going to steal this from you for just a second, put it on the overhead, on the elbow, and then have you read from your original, if you don't mind. So what we call redundancy. Ms. Matthews, take a look. If that's a little hard to read, I know if it is or isn't. At the block that's labeled B as in boy. And I'm going to point to a couple of things on the overhead and ask you to continue reading. And I think the last thing that you read was something about male white was in the room now. Please use caution, weapon involved, correct?
That is correct.
Moving forward to where line 11, and I'm using that in layman's terms, where it says 624, there appears to be again, I can't get words out. There appears to be, again, a computer-coded reference. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, looking beneath it at 625, starting with MW dressed, could you read that for us?
Male white, dressed in black, dark brown hair, about 5 feet, thin built. Operator 1430-12.
Is this, again, additional information that the operator 1430-12 is getting from the female caller, Stephanie Jennings?
That is correct.
All right. At 625, there appears to be another computer-coded input, and then beneath that, 2 lines, starts with FEM, afraid. Could you read that for us, please?
FEM is abbreviated for female, afraid to talk, male, ML for male, standing by the phone, PLZ for please hurry, operator 1430-12.
Continuing on down the next line at 625, starting with STS. Could you please read that for us?
STS is abbreviated for states. State security is downstairs. PLZ, as I said before, is abbreviated for please. Please help. Operator 1430-12.
That's now the 3rd time that the phrase please help has appeared in the first 2 blocks. Is that correct?
Please help, I only see one, sir.
The look on you know what? It's not working. I'll move on. Anytime the word PLZ or the abbreviation PLZ appears, is that the word please?
That is correct.
Okay, so if it says please hurry, please help, please use caution, that's that abbreviation, correct?
That is correct.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. There appears to be at 627, again, a computer-generated code inputted, and then it basically ends that block B, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to have to approach one more time.
All right.
Move to block C and D, if I may. Taking a look at the area on people 6 that have been marked with a C as in Charlie. Let's move down past the computer code and move to 627 where it indicates SLOW down, slow down. What does that mean?
Slow down means the operator is getting feedback that the units are telling her to advise the other units to slow down.
Okay, in other words, that's some police jargon for we need to reconnoiter at the same time or something of that nature. In other words, don't get there before us.
No, it just means to slow down. If you're speeding, slow down.
Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely. I should just sit down now. All right. Thank you for that. I'm never going to live that down, Ms. Matthews. Never
going to get a better answer.
Never, ever, ever. All right, let's move to 628. Starting at the line where it indicates FC. Could you read that for us, please?
FC is abbreviated for female caller. Stephanie asks OPR for abbreviation for operator to stay on the line with her. States, STS means states. MW for male white. Just walked outside the door. Name Phil Spector. 60-year-old, big celebrity, operator 1430-12.
Moving down to 0629, the next line down, starting with the word correction. Could you please read that for us?
Then it says correction, name Phil Spector, 60-year-old, went to room 3301.
At 630, starting with ML, could you read that for us, please?
ML is abbreviation for male, went to room 3301, 33rd FLR is abbreviated for floor, operator 1430-12.
And I think that ends, well, there's something down that looks, a line below that or two lines below that looks like it says transmitted additional. Does that mean anything?
Exmitted additional means that the additional information that was received from the 911 operator to the dispatcher was dispatched out to the units.
All right, fair enough. May I approach one more time?
You may.
Now let's move to block D as in dog. Starting where it indicates the word continued at 6:06.
I understand. Hey, Carla. I understand the getting in the prior bad acts, but it sometimes seems like they take up a lot of time proving the prior bad acts, like too much time, instead of focusing on what they're trying the person for. Does it ever feel like that to you guys? Like, sometimes I want to say, can we just get to like why we're here? I think we've established that he's done bad things to a lot of women now. Can we now move on to why we're actually here? No wonder this trial was so long. I mean, okay, we've established the man has a bad history with women. And can we move on now? Thank you.
31. Could you please read beginning with SPCT?
SPCT is abbreviated for Supervisor Police Communication Technician. DER is the name of the supervisor. NTFD is abbreviation for notified. OPR is abbreviated for Operator 1430-12.
And the line beneath that beginning with OU.
OU is abbreviation for Operations Unit. The name of the person is MERZ, MERZ. NTFD for notified, and then again, SPCT abbreviation for Supervisor Police Communication Technician, DER.
So, and that basically ends the information from the female caller. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So in total, the call began at 0623, which is 6:23 in the morning. That's when the 911 call was generated to begin with, and the call appears to have ended somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 minutes later at 0633 or 0634. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Did you say Miss or Ms.?
It's Mrs.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm doing about the same as Mr. Jackson here this
No
afternoon.
pun intended, all right?
Well, Mrs. Matthews, welcome to Los Angeles, and on behalf of some of us, thanks for bringing the hot weather.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you some questions here, if I may, okay? As I understand it, you are a police communications technician for the New York City Police Department, is that right?
That is correct.
And that is a mouthful. You've been with them for 17 and a half years, correct?
That is correct.
And how long have you been in the position as a police communications tech?
For 17 years.
For the full 17?
Yes.
So you're definitely one of the instructors and the veterans there, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this call here. This incident log, as I understand, am I referring to correctly, incident record listing? It's an
That is correct.
Can I call it an incident log? Is that okay?
It is an incident log.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, this is a business record, a business document, which is maintained by the New York Police Department, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And
Is there any, I mean, I'm sure there's just no way you can estimate how many calls NYPD gets in a given year like this, just hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we're talking about a very large cosmopolitan city, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And as I understand it, when a call like this comes in, there's actually a couple of records that are made, one of which is what we just saw up here on the screen, which is the, I'm calling again, the incident log, correct?
It is an incident log, but it's a sprint.
Okay. Another way of recording these calls, other than an incident log, is with an actual tape. Isn't that true?
That is correct.
Okay. And as I understand it, back in 1995, back on January 13th, 1995, specifically when this incident log was authored or created, NYPD did in fact tape record these calls that came in. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And this call was tape recorded, wasn't it?
That is correct.
But we don't have that tape, do we?
No, we do not.
And I understand the reason we do not have that tape, which would actually have the voice or voices of the party speaking. Am I right about that?
That is correct, sir.
So if I called you, for example, or if anybody called you, Mr. Jackson called you and was reporting a 9/11 call and you were the operator that received it, there would be a tape recording, a tape memorialization of your call with Mr. Jackson or with me, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. You told us in this particular call, which I think is call number F02257, am I right? Help me here if you would, please.
Frank 2257, that is correct.
Okay. You told us we don't have the tape, correct?
No, we do not, sir.
And the reason we don't have the tape is because it was erased on April 14th of 1995. Isn't that true?
That is correct.
Okay. I also understand that there are roll call sheets. And help me here if you would, please, again. There are roll call sheets that are maintained on a daily basis by NYPD. Is that correct?
What type of roll call sheets are you talking
In
about?
other words, which officers appear for duty that day at a particular time? I'm trying to find out.
Does it exist? Are there such sheets? Are you aware of
I'm
them?
objecting as to her expertise. She wouldn't know. She has no foundation.
She might. I just, first of all, and then we'll sort of work backwards. Just as Sophia, she's able to answer the question. Do you know, ask the question again.
Sure. Do you know if New York Police Department maintains roll call sheets? In other words, lists of officers who report on a daily basis for their job assignments.
Yes, they have roll call sheets for their officers.
Okay, can I follow up?
Yes.
And you know that, you've learned that through your experience of 17 and a half years with NYPD as a police communications technician, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And in this particular instance, were you able or were you ever asked to locate the roll call sheets for the police officers that responded to the Carlisle Hotel on that morning?
No, I was not. That is not part of my job, sir.
Okay. Do you know this, and you can just answer yes or no, do you know if anybody else, as a representative of New York Police Department, was requested by Mr. Jackson or Mr. Dixon through the DA's office to find the roll call sheets for that particular morning?
Objection, no call for speculation.
Sustain. Call for hearsay, call for speculation.
As I understand it, this call was finally cleared, and if I'm wrong here, you'll tell me if I step in mud, okay? And it was cleared as a 10-91 or situation corrected, is that right?
It was ended as a 1091 final disposition, mean condition was corrected. That is correct.
Okay, would you kindly tell the jury, what does it mean condition was corrected?
1091 for condition corrected means that there was no serious crime where they had to either lock someone up, take someone under, or involve more units or different type of other agencies. It was not that serious of a crime.
Okay. And when you say it was not that serious of a crime, can you just define that a little bit further for me?
It wasn't that someone was shot or stabbed, or it wasn't someone emotionally disturbed, or wasn't someone bleeding to death.
Okay. or assaulted or something along those lines?
Objection.
Sustain.
Let's take a look at the call if we can for a couple of moments, okay? I wonder if we could have that put back up there, please.
You may.
They give us, they take it away. Thank you. Okay, let me ask you a few foundational questions. You were not the person that received this call, is that correct?
No, I was not.
You were testifying here today as the custodian of these records, correct?
That is correct, sir.
So you have no personal knowledge whatsoever about the contents of this call, only what you see on the pages on these papers, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Have you ever met a young lady named Stephanie Jennings?
No, I have not, sir.
Have you ever spoken to Stephanie Jennings?
No, I have not.
So as you sit there, you know nothing about this other than that name appears on section A in the middle there. Sudi, if you could help me with that, please. Thank you. Maybe you could.
Of course she doesn't know her. What kind of question is that? Yeah, I'm sure 911 operators make a point to meet everybody they talk to on 911. What the heck?
Could use that little square thing you did when Alan was. Oh, it was on the computer. Okay, well, then pointing's fine. Oh, don't ask me to do something technical. You've really got the wrong guy for that.
Just the laser pointer.
Yeah, I'm scared. Okay, yes. Down on the next 2 lines down, if you would. Right there, yeah. Okay, you see the name there?
Yes, I do.
So all you know is that's the name of some young lady, correct?
That is correct, sir.
As I understand, you've never spoken with her personally about any of the information contained in this exhibit, People 6, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And so my final foundational question is, you were not a recipient witness to any of the information contained in the 4 sections, A, B, C, and D of People 6. That's true.
That is correct, sir.
And when I say recipient witness, you didn't see any of this with your own eyes. It's only what you're reading on the pages, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Now, could we go to, I believe, B, if you would please, Sudi? Can we get that centered, please, when you get a sec? Thank you. Now, I want to direct your attention up here, if I may, to the screen. We're now in section B of the record.
Yes.
You were gracious enough to assist Mr. Jackson in explaining what some of the technical letters and numbers mean. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
And you went through a part of this for us here this afternoon and explained what that meant. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to focus you on one particular part of this. About the middle, there's a line that starts with, I think it looks like to me, T as in Tom, 12, E as in Earl. Do you see that? Right there where Sudi's pointing.
Yes, I do, sir.
And I want to work, I would like you, if you would, for a moment, to help me here understanding this line. What is the next entry? There are 4 numbers. Is that the time? No, going horizontal. Down, please. Right there. Yeah, right there. That. Right there. Yes. We're going to go across. Keep going, please. There we go. We're going to go across this horizontally. Let's stay with the 0625. So you can go back. Thank you. That is the time, correct?
0625, sir?
Yes.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. The next entry, it looks to me like 2 dBn. I don't know. Maybe could you help us with that?
That is computer generated, sir, and I have no knowledge.
Okay, that's fine. Let's go to the next entry, and that's FEM, which I assume is a short version of female.
It's an abbreviation for female, sir. That is correct.
Afraid to talk, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, now let's get to the next part. This shows on part B of People 6, ML, and then it says something, correct?
That is correct, sir.
What did the computer generate? What does that say? Read it for me, please.
That says male standing by the phone.
It does not say male sitting in a chair in front of the door with gun in hand, does it?
No, it does not, sir.
As a matter of fact, you've looked at A, B, C, and D before testifying here today, correct?
Correct, sir.
And in looking through those 4 parts, there is nothing in A, B, C, or D which says that there is a male seated in a chair in front of a door with a gun. Is there?
No, there is not stating that there's a man sitting in front of the door with a gun, sir. That is correct.
And also, Mrs. Matthews, as I understand, there's nothing anywhere in People 6, parts A, B, C, and D, which indicates that this male pointed this weapon at Stephanie Jennings, pointed it directly at her. That's true, isn't it?
It does not state that, sir.
Thank you. I think we need to go to C, if I remember. Please see. Thank you. I'm looking for the part. Is that in C? Or am I just wrong on that? Do you see it there? Do you see the slowdown there on the top?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. And as I understand it, your interpretation of that was if you're speeding, slow down, something to that effect, correct?
That is correct, sir.
So there's nothing indicated in C. This is a very serious situation. ASAP, get there. Is there?
Let me look at the box again,
Sure,
sir.
please do, please do.
There's nothing in box C, sir, that states that this is a serious crime to get there.
Thank you. Let's take a look at, let's continue and stay with C for a moment. And I want you to take a look further down at the entry that says T12E 0630 hours. Okay, yes, thank you. Now, let's start with that, if we may, for a moment. Can you help us, Mrs. Matthews, what does T12E mean?
That's Terminal 12 where the operator was sitting at, sir.
Oh, okay. That's the operator who received the call, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And it came in, according to the next piece of information, at 0630 hours or 6:30 a.m., right?
That's just the time generated from the computer. That's additional information she's typing in from that call at that time.
Okay. NYPD, in using these incident logs, work on military time, correct?
That is correct, sir.
So 0630 hours is 6:30 a.m.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. Let's go down a little bit further. We've already defined the next term, but let's go to where it says ML, horizontally back. Yes, thank you, right there. Right there. Can you read that, please?
Male went to room 3301 on the 33rd floor, operator 1430-12.
Let's stay with just that central part. ML meaning male, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Went to room 3301, correct?
Correct, sir.
How would the operator know that The operator would have known it was room 3301 because the voice on the other end, presumably Mrs. Jennings, would have told her that, correct?
That is correct, sir.
So therefore, this information indicates that the male left the room and went to a specific room, room 3301, correct?
Correct, sir.
And the call from Ms. Jennings was coming from what other room? Do you remember part A?
It was coming from another room in Part A. I'm not sure what that room was, sir.
Commissioner?
You may.
Okay. No, you keep it up there, I have it. Go ahead. And if we look at part A, oh, I got to cut off when I need to pull one. Hang on a second. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Showing you part A. Go ahead, you can take it. I'll take it back afterwards. Okay. Your Honor, may I just ask a question from you?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you take a look at part A and tell us from which room at the Carlisle Hotel that morning did this call originate from?
On that morning from the Carlisle Hotel, the call originated from room 3307 on the 33rd floor.
That's a different room than 3301.
That is correct, sir.
And the information that winds up in this business record indicating that this man left 3307 and went to 3301 came from the call, correct?
That is correct, sir.
That wasn't somebody just guessing, was it?
No, sir.
That's also speculation.
Sustained. Stricken, jury's admonished.
Your Honor, may I have just a moment, please, with my
You may.
colleagues? Just one other quick question. Well, the foible of every lawyer when they say just one more quick question, no such thing. Were you requested, I know you were requested to come out here from New York and testify as a custodian of record. Were you ever asked to look to see if there were any police reports generated as a result of this incident?
What type of police reports are you talking about, sir?
Well, I've got to plead ignorance here. I don't know how New York, I should have Mr. Cutler help me, but any kind of police report, such as a crime report or an incident report or an arrest report or anything of that nature, follow-up, supplemental, anything of that nature.
The only thing I can testify, sir, is to the Sprint report, which you guys requested from LA.
This here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much, ma'am, and again, welcome to Los Angeles. I hope you have a safe journey home.
Thank you, sir.
Redirect, thank you.
I have nothing more. Thank
May
you.
this witness be excused.
No objection.
Hearing no objection. Thank you for being here. You may step down.
Thank you, sir.
First and last name for the record.
Melissa Grosvenor.
Could you spell your name, please?
Yes, sir. Grosvenor.
Thank you. And your first name?
Melissa,
You can spell that for me, please.
Melissa.
Thank you. If you would sit back, pull the microphone right up underneath your chin, then we can hear you and you don't have to lean forward. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to Los Angeles. I'd like to invite your attention to May of 1991. Where did you live then?
New York City,
How long had you lived in New York City in May of 1991?
11 months.
11 months?
Yes, sir.
And were you working at the time?
I was.
What were you doing?
I was a waitress at Mumbles Restaurant.
I'm
sorry. Mumbles?
Mumbles Restaurant?
Yes, sir.
Try not to be humble myself. And sometime later, did that restaurant close?
It did. They lost their lease.
And did you move to another restaurant where you worked?
I did. I moved to Mermondo's.
And in both those restaurants, what was your job?
I was a waitress.
Now, the second restaurant, what's the name of that?
Mermondo's.
Was that near a big hotel?
It was. It was right across from the Waldorf. It was the restaurant in the Doral Hotel.
Okay, and we'll come back to that. In May of 1991, did you meet a man by the name of Philip Spector?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell me how that happened? Just explain it to me.
Sure. My sister and I lived in New York together, and we were friends of Ahmed Ernagan, and he invited us to a dinner party that he was throwing. And I went to the dinner party, but I actually had other plans, but I could go for the cocktail hour. So I went, and then after the cocktail hour, as soon as they sat us down to eat dinner, I said goodbye, and then I was leaving. I was on my way out. And when I was leaving, Phil was walking in with a date. He was with a blonde-haired girl, and they're walking towards me as I'm leaving, and he said, wait, where are you going? And I said, well, I have other plans. I'm leaving. And he said, well,
I'm going to object this one. You kind of hear it.
In a way it is, but it's also part of the conversation. It's a long sort of question and answer, not question and answer. It just needs a long answer. I'm going to allow it as long as it doesn't go too much longer.
Okay, fine. You can finish your thought. So you're walking out from this restaurant because you had another event to attend.
Right.
You ran into Phil, you said.
right.
What happened then?
He asked me, he told me who he was, and I told him who I was, and he asked me to stay. And I said no, that I had other plans. And so I left, and he went up to Ahmed and asked him who, the girl that just left, Melissa, who is that? And
You
he,
later learned that.
right.
Let me ask you a few questions about what you just told us, okay? The Phil, do you see that Phil here in court today?
Yes, sir.
Could you point to him and tell the judge what he's wearing today?
He's right there with the black shirt and gray suit.
Indicating Mr. Spector for the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. Where was this dinner party?
It was at a restaurant.
Do you recall the name?
I don't.
And you said, oh, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said that your sister went to the dinner party also.
She did.
Did she leave when you left or did she stay?
She stayed.
Prior to that day, prior to when you were leaving this restaurant, early before the dinner after the cocktail hour and met the defendant, Phil Spector, had you ever heard of him before?
No, sir.
Didn't know who he was?
I did not.
And after he introduced himself to you as you left, did you know any more about him?
I did not.
When's the next time that you heard anything about Phil Spector or from Phil Spector?
The following day, his assistant called me and said that Mr. Spector was wondering if you and your sister would like to join him for dinner tonight.
Now, did that come as a surprise? Had you given him your phone number as you walked out of the restaurant that night?
I didn't, but he walked up to my sister and asked her if she had my number.
And later that evening, the same evening that you first met Phil Spector, did you have a conversation with your sister where she told you that information?
She didn't. The following day when he called, I said, you gave this guy my number, and she said, yeah, that was Phil Spector. And I don't know if she knew who he was, but she had met him actually another time prior to that night of that dinner party.
At least that's what you learned later on.
Right.
So when you got the call from the assistant who said they worked for Phil Spector, that was a surprise to you. You didn't give me your phone number.
Right, I did not.
Okay. And that assistant, do you recall their name?
I don't.
That assistant in that phone call the next day asked you if you and your sister wanted to go out to dinner.
Right.
What happened? Did you accept?
We did.
What happened then? Where'd you go?
We went out to dinner and had a great time. He was very charming. He's a quick wit. We laughed a lot and had fun.
And after that dinner, the first real dinner that you had with him, with your sister, did you start some type of dating relationship with Phil Spector?
I did.
How long did that last?
About a year and a half.
And during that year and a half period of time, would you characterize it as a romantic relationship?
It was platonic relationship.
How often, typically per week or per month, did you see Phil Spector during this year and a half period of time?
I don't know if it was necessarily bi-weekly. A couple of times a month, we would go do things.
Like what?
We would go to dinner. We would go to the Knick basketball games. I'd go to parties with him.
And during that period of time, did you enjoy being in his company?
I did.
This all occurred in New York
It did.
during the year and a half.
Yes, sir.
And during that year and a half period of time, did you learn where Phil Spector lived, where he resided?
Well, he was living in a presidential suite at the hotel in New York, but I knew that he was from California.
He told you that,
He told me that.
that he had a home in California,
Right.
and he also stayed in a hotel in New York.
Yes, sir.
When you first met him, or at least when you first learned where he lived in New York, which hotel was it? Do you recall?
I don't really recall.
Did there come a time when you learned that he moved hotels to a hotel closer to where you were?
He did. He moved to the Waldorf.
And approximately how long after these first couple dinners did you learn that Phil Spector moved to the Waldorf Astoria?
It was probably closer to a year.
So after you'd been seeing each other for on and off for about a year, he moved to the Waldorf.
Right.
And again, how far from the restaurant where you were working at that time was the Waldorf?
Just across the street.
Now I'd like you to think, I'll focus on a period of time about a year and a half after you met him. Did there come a time when he invited you to come to Los Angeles, to his Pasadena home?
Yes, sir.
Explain how that happened.
Well, he was in New York. He was going back to California, and he asked me if I wanted to come and see California and stay a couple of days. And I said, let me check my schedule, and I can see if I can. So then I told him that I could, that I had 4 days that I could go. And so his assistant called me and got the dates, and then she sent me a ticket. So when I got the ticket, it was a one-way ticket. So then I called him and, I asked him.
Okay, let me ask you about that. Just, a couple of questions about that. So Phil Spector, made the initial request of you to come to California.
Right,
And then all the details were handled by a special assistant?
right.
And when you said you needed to check your schedule, was that your work schedule to make sure you get that many days off?
Yes, sir.
And how many days off did you plan on taking when you went to California to see Phil Spector?
4.
You cleared that with your work.
I did.
And in your earlier answer, you said that the special assistant from Phil Spector sent you a one-way ticket to California from New York. Is that right?
That's right.
Did that cause initially any concern or alarm, or just make you wonder?
Well, it did cause concern, and that's why I called and I said, why is this a one-way ticket?
What was your concern?
He just said that, I thought we would just play it by ear and see how long you wanted to stay. If you wanted to extend your stay, or maybe we'll just go back to New York a day or two early, we'll just play it by ear. So I trusted him and went.
So because of that conversation, your concern wasn't as great as it had been before.
Right.
So the time came for you to get on the airplane and fly to California to see Phil Spector, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was this do you recall morning, afternoon flight? Do you remember when you arrived in LA?
It seems like I arrived around 1 o'clock
In the afternoon?
in the afternoon, after lunch.
And did Phil Spector meet you at the airport?
He did not.
Well, how did you get around?
Well, he sent a driver and they held a sign with my name. And then I got picked up and taken over to the hotel,
Where was the hotel to the best of your record?
Pasadena.
Had you ever been to Los Angeles before?
I'd been once before.
Okay. Do you remember the name of the hotel?
I don't.
Okay. But you went from LA International, I assume, is that right?
Right.
With the driver to a Pasadena hotel. What happened then?
I checked in and I was there until, I got picked up at 8 o'clock to go to dinner.
And how did you get picked up? Did Phil Spector come and get you? Did he come in a limo with a driver? How did that
A
happen?
limo with the driver.
And where did you go next? What were the evening plans?
We went to dinner at the Beverly Hills Hotel restaurant, and then after dinner, we went back to his house.
All right, let me ask you a few more questions about that. So you went to the Beverly Hills Hotel for dinner. If you left Pasadena at 8 o'clock, would you get there at 8:30, 9 o'clock? About?
Probably.
And do you recall whether or not Phil Spector had any alcoholic beverages during the dinner? Did he drink?
Yes, sir. He did.
How about you?
Yes, sir.
And after the dinner, what did you do next? Where'd you go?
We went back to his house,
In Pasadena.
Pasadena.
Do you have any sense about what time you arrived back in Pasadena after the dinner in Beverly Hills?
I'm not sure what time we arrived,
Could have been, what, 10 or 11 o'clock?
or midnight. It was late.
Even as late as midnight.
Yes, sir.
Is that the first time you'd ever been to his Pasadena hotel, Phil Spector's house?
This hotel.
Excuse me, thank you, Your Honor, his house.
Yes, sir.
And what happened when you arrived at the house? Just tell us what you did.
We went in and he fixed us a drink and he started playing music and we were dancing and having a good time.
So you told us at the dinner in Beverly Hills, he was drinking there, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did he continue to drink at his home in Pasadena?
Yes, sir.
Did you?
I had a drink, but I didn't drink it because I was tired and I didn't want to drink anymore.
When you were tired, you were on New York time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall whether or not Phil Spector had just one drink or more than one drink, or do you know?
I can't recall.
Do you remember whether or not he showed any effects from the consumption of alcohol that evening?
Well, yes, I did.
Explain that to us, please. What did you see?
Well, he wasn't stumbling drunk, but he definitely was a little drunk.
Slurring his words at all, or unsteady at times? What?
Your Honor, I have nothing on this subject. I'm leading suggestions.
Just saying, even though it said or what, I would tend to agree. Just in your own words, tell us what, if anything, you noticed that made you think he might have been under the influence.
He was slurring his words some, and I guess because I just know how much he'd had to drink.
In an earlier answer, you said when you arrived at the home, not only did you each have something to drink, but you danced to some music. Is that correct?
Right.
How long? Half an hour, hour? Did you dance to the same music over and over, or different music? Tell us about it.
Yeah, he was playing the same song over and over for a large part of the time. And
Is that a song that you recognized or you liked, or what?
no, sir, I didn't know the song, and I didn't really like it because I listen to country for the most part.
So at some point after the dancing and listening to music, did you had enough?
Yes, sir.
Did you indicate that to Phil Spector in any way that you had enough, that you wanted to do something else?
I did. I was tired. It was after a couple of hours of being there. And it seems like it was around 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I'm tired. I want to go. And as soon as I said, I'm tired, I want to go, he turned and looked at me and he pointed his finger and he said, what? You want to go? And then right then I knew his whole demeanor had changed. And that kind of, I was kind of taken back by that. But he said, wait.
It's becoming a narrative. All right, you've answered the question. You may ask another question.
Thank you. You said you thought it was about 2 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles, right?
Right.
But you left in New York, so this was really 5 a.m. to you? Mm-hmm. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
In your last answer, you said after you indicated to Phil Spector that you wanted to go home, you wanted to leave, he pointed his finger at you and his demeanor changed. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you've been seeing him for a year and a half, correct?
Right.
Had you ever seen his demeanor change like that before?
I had not.
After he pointed his finger at you and said, you aren't leaving or whatever you told us, what happened next?
Well, he walked out of the room and then I sat down. There was a big chair. I sat down and I was just waiting for him to come back.
Why were you sitting there? Ready to go?
I was ready to go.
Did you have a handbag with you?
I did.
Where was it?
Sitting on the same chair I was sitting in.
Ready to go with you.
Yes, sir.
Did Phil Spector reappear after you sat down with your handbag in the chair? Was it, by the way, was the chair near the front door?
It was just in the room where we had been dancing.
And as you sat down in the chair with your handbag near, did Phil Spector reappear?
He did.
And what happened then?
He walked in with a gun.
A gun?
Yes, sir.
Did you see anything else on him that you hadn't seen before?
He was wearing a holster.
Describe the holster for
It
me.
was a shoulder holster.
And the gun, what kind of gun was it? Do you know? Do you recall? The long gun, a short
It was a
gun?
handgun.
A handgun. And what was he doing with the handgun when he reappeared in the room with the shoulder holster as you sat there in the chair? What happened?
He walked right up to me and held the gun right to my face with just inches between my eyes and said, "If you try to leave, I'm going to kill you."
He said, if you try to leave, I'm going to kill you?
Yes, sir.
What was your reaction to this with a gun in your face, just inches away?
I was shocked. I just started crying. And I sat there. I was going to move because I didn't want to give him any kind of indication that I was trying to leave.
Were you afraid?
Yes, sir.
Can you a lot, a little?
Well, I was afraid a lot because there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to kill me if I tried to leave.
He said that to you.
Yes, sir.
Now, did you know whether the gun was loaded or not?
Well, I didn't want to test it.
You don't want to take that chance, did you? Now, as you sat there in the chair with the gun pointed just inches from your face, what did Phil Spector say or do after he told you if you moved, he'd kill you?
Well, he put the gun in the holster and then he started tapping it and then just walking back and forth, cursing and just talking wild. And I can't even really tell you what he's saying because I was so upset. But
Were you crying?
yes, sir.
Is this very upsetting to you?
Yes, sir.
So much so that you don't really remember exactly what he was saying.
Right.
Do you remember if anything he said involved profanities, swear words directed at you?
There were, yes, he was cursing a lot.
And were you saying anything to him?
I didn't say anything.
Why?
I was scared and I was just crying so much I didn't say anything.
Now, in the year and a half that you've been seeing him, had you ever seen this before, this switch?
Overruled. It's overruled. You may answer.
You can answer that. Had you ever seen this kind of switch in his
No, sir.
demeanor?
I had not.
Came as a big shock?
Overruled. You may answer.
How long
Sorry,
did,
I didn't get it.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry. Thank you.
thank
On
you.
that note, it's time for our recess. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition, and we'll be in recess for 15 minutes. You may step down if you wish. You're not to discuss your testimony with anyone except the attorney. All right. All parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present as heretofore, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Again, good
You know, defense keeps trying to insinuate that these women should not be afraid of a pew pew being waved around in their faces and him saying, "If you leave, I'm going to unalive you." Why wouldn't they be afraid of that? I don't understand. Why would somebody not be afraid of that? Like, every time one of these witnesses is like, "Yeah, I was afraid because he had a gun," does the defense object? It's stupid. Yeah. If someone pulls out a gun and says, "I'm going to unalive you if you leave," that's scary. In what world is that not scary? Why do they keep objecting? Grow a brain, y'all. Jeez, I know you're defending your client, but logic. Use some logic. And the jury's heard it. The jury has heard it. They can put themselves in her shoes. Just keep objecting. The jury still hears it.
Good afternoon. Before we took the break, you were telling us how you came to Los Angeles to Pasadena, had dinner with Phil Spector, went to his house, and at some point he's pointing a gun at your face, telling you that if you try to leave, he'll kill you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Then you told us about What happened after that? At some point, did you fall asleep?
I did.
Explain that. How did that happen?
Well, I was just sitting in the chair crying hysterically. And then I closed my eyes, kind of just thinking that it would, just seem like it was a nightmare. And I fell asleep.
Do you have any sense of what time that was? Sometime after 2?
I don't.
At some point, you woke up.
I did. Phil woke me up.
It hasn't been answered. She's explaining how she woke up. That was an objection that's overruled. You may proceed.
Please tell us.
Phil tapped me on the foot, and I opened my eyes. And the first thing that I noticed was he didn't have the gun and he didn't have the holster.
Is that the first thing you looked for as you woke up?
It was the first thing that I noticed. Yes, sir.
Was that important?
It was.
Why?
Well, because I was so freaked out the night before. When I opened my eyes, wanted to see if he was still holding a gun on me.
And was he?
He was not.
Were you in the same chair that you'd been in the night before when he was pointing the gun in your face?
Yes, sir.
Was it daylight outside or not?
It was daylight.
After he tapped your foot, you woke up, what happened next?
He said, "Would you like to go get some breakfast?" And I said, "Yes, I would."
Were you hungry, or was there some other reason you wanted to go have breakfast?
No, I wanted to go have breakfast so I could grab somebody to help me get away from him.
You wanted to get out of there.
I did.
When he, Phil Spector, tapped your foot and asked you if you wanted to go have breakfast, at that point, was there any mention about the night before with the shoulder holster and the gun in your face and the "I'm going to kill you"? Any mention of that at all?
There was no mention of it.
Were you surprised by that?
I was a little surprised.
Overruled.
Did you say anything about it?
I didn't.
Why?
I was afraid to.
And so after he tapped your foot, asked you to want to have breakfast, what happened then? Where'd you go?
We went to a diner, and when we sat down, I was looking around to see who I might be able to grab. And he said, "I suppose you want to go back to New York today." And I looked right at him, and I said, "Yes, I do."
And is that what happened? How'd you get to the airport? How'd you get home?
I went back to the hotel, I packed my things, and he sent over a ticket. A driver took me to the airport.
So after breakfast, did you even have breakfast?
I think we did. I don't think I ate anything, so I was still very upset.
So how did you get back to the hotel from where you were having breakfast?
Phil took me back to the hotel.
He drove?
He did.
Had you seen him drive before?
I had not, because we spent our time in New York where he didn't have a car or anything.
So after he asked you if you wanted to go home and you said yes, he drove you to the hotel, you packed up, somebody brought you a ticket, a limo came, and you went to LAX
Right,
and went home to New York.
I did.
About how long did you spend all together in Los Angeles?
About 19 hours,
And you were planning on spending how much time?
4 days.
So you got home way early.
I did.
At that time or some period of time afterwards, did you tell someone about this?
I did.
Who did you tell?
Overruled.
You can answer.
I told my family, and I told some friends.
Did you have a friend by the name of Fran?
I did.
And briefly, very briefly, describe that relationship, that friendship.
Fran and I were friends, and he happened to be in Mermondo's one night when Phil was there.
Relevancy grounds.
Overruled.
Please
And
go on.
so it was time for me to get off, and Phil was sitting at a table by himself. And then I asked Fran if he could take me home, and he did. When we got into Fran's car, I told him what had happened to me, that Phil had held me at gunpoint.
In Los Angeles at his Pasadena home.
Yes, sir.
In what kind of detail, without going through it all over again, but what kind of detail did you tell Fran? Just a gun and he threatened me, or was it more than that? I'm offering two different parts.
I'm sorry, just a second. the objection?
I didn't need to know this, I'm sorry.
Actually, I think he interrupted you. Go ahead. What else?
Objection on 2 grounds.
Yes.
1, relevancy, and 2,
Overruled. You may answer.
I told him exactly what I told you today, what happened.
Here in court in front of the jury.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, let's go back to that. When you got back to New York, you resumed your job, the job that you'd taken 4 days off from, is that correct?
Right.
And you told us earlier in your testimony before the break that the restaurant you worked at, forgive me, I forgot the name of it.
Mermondo's?
Yes, that's why, because I probably can't pronounce it. Okay. Was across the street from the Waldorf.
Right.
Did there come a time after you came back from Los Angeles from this situation you told us about with Phil Spector that you saw Phil Spector in the restaurant?
What was that?
After you came back from Los Angeles while working in your restaurant, did you see Phil Spector there?
I did.
How long after you'd come back from Los Angeles after this incident did you see Phil Spector in the restaurant?
It could have been the following month.
And from that point on, was this a rare occurrence that you saw him in the restaurant, or did it become more frequent?
It was frequent.
Can you characterize that for us? How often did you see him in your restaurant?
He would come in probably a couple of times a month. But I moved from New York to California. So
The latter part of the answer, I move, will be stricken, the jury is admonished, the rest will remain. You may proceed.
Just to follow up on that, at some point you moved from New York, is that right?
yes, sir.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the period of time from when you returned from Los Angeles and the incident at Phil Spector's house until you moved from New York. Do you have that period of time in mind?
6 months.
During that 6-month period of time, how often did Phil Spector come into this restaurant that you were working at, which was across from the Waldorf?
I'm not sure exactly how often.
Did you see him there more or less than 10 times?
More.
In that restaurant, were you the only waitress that worked in the bar area?
I was.
And so because of that, did you have to serve him?
I did.
Was that uncomfortable?
It was.
Describe that for us. How did he treat you? Was he kind and pleasant, or was he some other way?
No, he was very kind.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
He was very kind.
He was kind to you?
He was kind.
Did he leave big tips?
He did.
Did he do or say or act in any way that ever made you feel uncomfortable or threatened?
When he was in Mermondo's?
Yes, after the Pasadena incident.
Only, not in Mermondo's, but only when he called me up.
Okay. And to explain that for us.
He called me and asked me to go out, and I said no. And then he started threatening me, saying that I've got machine guns, and I know where you live, and you know what I can do with these guns.
And he made those calls to your home, to your apartment in New York?
Yes, sir.
After the Pasadena incident?
Yes, sir.
Did this happen just once or more than once?
More than once.
How many times?
Well, one time that he actually talked to me, and then he left a message on my answering machine.
So twice,
Twice, at least.
at least, or were there more?
Your Honor, objection. Reading is suggested.
Overruled.
I don't remember if there were more.
At least twice.
At least twice.
Once in person, you talked to him on the phone.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right? And once a message.
Right.
And in each of those instances, when you talked to him in the message, was the information that Phil Spector imparted to you, what he said, basically the same?
You may approach.
Thanks.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So these two phone calls, one you spoke to him on the phone, the other message, basically the message is what you told us. I have machine guns and what?
Do you know what I can do? I know where you live, and you know what I can do with these.
And did that frighten you?
It did.
And then after that, after the messages, did you see him in your restaurant across the street from the Waldorf?
I may have seen him again in the restaurant.
And is it about that same time that you talked with Fran and asked him to take you home?
Right, it was about the same time.
How did you get here? Did you meet him? Did somebody knock on your door, or Brian Bennett? Is that how you first met somebody from the district attorney's office?
Yes, sir, they came to my house in Wyoming.
You didn't do anything to approach law enforcement or anyone else about this?
No, sir.
And they interviewed you and talked to you, and then eventually you got a subpoena, or either that or a request to come to court. Is that right?
I was subpoenaed.
Okay. And that's why you're here today.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure there are other places you'd rather be.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I also need to ask you, back in 1989, were you, do you have your maiden name? What was that?
Pelegi.
Okay. On August 13th of 1989, were you convicted of embezzlement of bank frauds in district court in the Southern District of Georgia?
Yes, sir.
And that was on the date August 13th, 1989. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Objection relevant.
Thank you, cross-examination.
What
I
the
think
heck?
we can get started, and then if you need additional time, depending on where it goes, if you, okay, there's one incident, Mr. Rosen, that we discussed at the bench. It shouldn't prevent you from proceeding with cross-examination. But if you do not finish with the witness, and we're at 3:25 now, then we will have the witness come back tomorrow.
Your Honor, I may be able to address this.
Yes.
I would direct, not to sound cryptic, I would direct counsel's attention to
Okay.
Bates 4154 and 4155. It appears to address that issue.
Okay?
That. If you want to take a moment, I'll be happy to show it to them.
We have mine.
Grosvenor, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, sir.
The S is silent.
Right.
Okay. It's Mrs. Grosvenor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to start, ma'am, where Mr. Dixon left off. As you sit here today, you are a convicted felon. That is true, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And you suffered this felony conviction in the United States District Court, federal court in Georgia, correct?
Relevant. What the
I think
heck?
so.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can help you here. Jen, could I please have the first? Can you blow it up, please? Your Honor, what would the court, I don't know where we are. I'm sorry, I've
It
lost
would be on
track. 7 or 8?
K.
K, I'm sorry,
K.
not even in the right
Right.
numbers. Okay. May that please be marked defendants K, Your Honor. There will be a couple more exhibits after that. Do you want to do K, K1, K2, K3? It's all part of the record.
If it's going to be a set of documents pertaining to the same thing, you can.
Yes.
As long as Wendy's comfortable with it, that's fine.
Okay. Wendy, are we good with?
She's taking the call. All right. We'll find out later. Go ahead. If you want to mark them now.
I never want to get Wendy mad.
Neither do I. Do you want to mark them now?
Sure. Why don't we do K1 with that?
All right.
And then we'll go from there. Is it okay? We're going to have a series of 4 documents, K1, K2, K3, K4. Is that all right with you?
They're all pertaining to the same, or would you prefer separate?
I prefer separate letters, but that's fine.
Separate?
We were told, and real quickly.
Okay.
Okay. And then L, Your Honor, will be a 2-page document entitled Information. M will be a seven-page document entitled Plea Agreement, and then N would be a 4-page document, which is known as a J&C in federal court, known as a judgment, including sentence under the Sentencing Reform Act.
This might be premature, but Jeff, I think they're entitled to the abstract of judgment, but not all the underlying
I tend to
documents.
agree, and I'm not sure I want them marked and shown. They may not necessarily, unless you can convince me that they're otherwise relevant.
May we approach?
You may.
Ms. Grosvenor, let me ask you this. You were convicted in 1989, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were convicted of a felony, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that felony that you were convicted of was Title 18 of the United States Code 656, which is otherwise known as embezzlement of bank funds, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were convicted in federal court where?
Augusta, Georgia.
Okay, the Southern District of Georgia, correct?
I don't know.
All right. But anyway, your recollection is Georgia Federal District Court, correct?
Yes, sir.
I understand. Well, Your Honor, I'm going to need to approach again. All right. I'm going to need to.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Groner, I want to turn your attention to October 31st, 1988. On October 31st, 1988, you made an application. In making that application, you were required to fill out a form, a lengthy form.
Right.
And you did fill out that form and you signed it. Is that correct?
I would assume I did.
Okay. You indicated that there were no misrepresentations, falsifications, or omissions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There were two questions in this application. Prior to this, you had worked at First Union National Bank, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And on one page of the application, there's a section entitled Employment History, correct?
Correct.
And there's a number of lines, and the last line reads, and this is in pre-printed form, reason for leaving, colon, and you wrote in, got hired with Continental Airlines. That is not true. That was not the reason why you left First Union National Bank, is it?
Right.
You were fired from there. You were
Yes, sir.
dismissed, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because of the theft, correct?
Yes, sir.
There was a second part on the, well, with the court's permissions, I'd like to publish it to the jury now.
That's fine.
Thank you. Jen, may I please have, yes. Can you please blow up the top portion, please? Can you see that?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the section entitled Employment History, correct?
Correct.
Your handwriting appears throughout that portion of this application, correct?
Correct.
That's all your handwriting that we are seeing, other than the pre-printed full part of the form, correct?
Correct.
And turning your attention to the bottom where it says reason for leaving, where it says in cursive writing, got hired with Continental Airlines, you wrote that, didn't you?
I did.
And you knew when you wrote it, it was a lie, correct?
I did.
Could I have the next exhibit page, please, which would be pagination page 6500.
For the record, what exhibit is this?
We haven't marked it yet.
Oh, okay.
K,
Well, it depends. Now, K was a court record, and then we started to discuss L&M, and then there we came to the bench, and for the reasons stated, we're probably not getting into that material, but you can still mark it if you want a record of it. Just, you just have to describe it.
I'd like to mark it as a record.
How many exhibits do you want?
There were 4 exhibits from that, which we are not going into at the moment.
Well, K, I
I'll do
believe,
whatever you want.
K, I believe, was the record. It was the front page of the matter from Georgia. Okay. L, M, and N, if you have 4 total sets of documents, L, M, and N will be those documents. You can describe the others to Wendy, or you can describe it for the record now. If you're now looking for a new exhibit number, this would be O.
Okay, this will be, so we're going to have 3 pages from this, Wendy. How do you prefer? I do it O, LMNOPQ, or O1, 2, or 3? What do you-
It's just defendant's O, a 3-page document.
Okay.
Okay.
This is where. Okay. Could you blow up the
Area where it says, have you ever? No, to the right. It says, have you ever? There you go. Could we have that? Thank you. Could you please blow that up? Okay. Mrs. Grover, do you see this portion of this page which says, have you ever? You see that?
Oh, there, yes,
Can you make it a little bigger, Jen, please, so she can see?
I can see it. if you
Oh,
want.
see it.
You see that on the left side, there's questions, and on the right side, there's boxes under the headings yes and no, correct?
Correct,
You've checked all the no boxes, right?
right.
Would you please read the last question? Okay. Can we get that in bigger, Jim?
Can you see it? If not, I can read it to you.
I think you can. There. All right, could you kindly read that?
Been dismissed, suspended, or asked to resign from any job.
And you checked the no box.
Yes, sir.
And that was an untruth and a lie also, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And finally, I want to show you what's been marked as pagination page
6502, please. The bottom third of the page, Jen, I need your assistance in publishing it to the jury in particular, if you can. That's pretty small writing. Can you see that from there? Mrs. Grover?
I cannot.
You cannot, okay. Is there any way we can blow up that first paragraph, please? Can you read that? All right, let me read it to you and see it. Applicant statement.
Jackson, this has been asked and answered. He's already asked.
I'm going to allow it.
Applicant statement, read carefully before signing. I certify that the information contained in this application is true and complete, and that any misrepresentation, falsification, or omission herein shall be sufficient reason for dismissal from or refusal of employment. I authorize Continental Airlines, Inc., herein called the company, and that was in parens, to contact any previous employer, educational institution, or reference given by me, and I hereby authorize my previous employer and such designated references to release the same. Did you see that? Or did you hear that?
I heard you.
Okay, can you get the bottom of the page, please, Jennifer? All right, and at the bottom, there's a signature line and a date line. Do you see that?
I can see that.
You see your signature?
I do.
And you signed it and dated it after you read it, correct?
Right,
And you knew when you did that, you were providing false information to Continental Airlines, right?
right.
You have referred to a sister, and you indicated that in May of 1991, you lived in New York City, is that right?
Right,
You moved to New York City from Georgia, correct?
correct.
And the reason you moved there was because,
Relevant.
We did discuss, but I don't know that the reason she moved at this point is relevant at all, given what prior testimony. At this point, the objection is sustained. We can revisit it at a later time if necessary.
Okay, that's fine. You moved there with your sister Angela, didn't you?
I did. Well, she moved with me.
Okay. Well, at any rate, the two of you moved to New York and Georgia, right?
Yes, sir.
And you lived together in New York, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And how long did you live together in New York?
A year and a half.
You shared the same residence, isn't that correct?
Right.
At that time, I understand now that you two are estranged. That's a fair statement, isn't it?
It is.
But at that time, you were very close, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
It would be fair to say, wouldn't it, Ms. Grosvenor, that in fact you were best friends at that time?
You could say that.
Okay. And she would confide in you, wouldn't she?
She would.
And you would confide in her, correct?
Yes, sir.
The two of you basically had no secrets from one another at that time, right?
Objection. Sorry. Stereo.
Jackson, relevancy?
It depends. It depends whether there's going to be any statements that are introduced at a later time. I'll allow that question and we'll see where else we go. You may answer.
Thank you.
Overruled.
You may answer. Do you have the question in mind or you need it read back?
Read it back.
Sure. Your Honor, with the court's permission.
Would it be fair to say the two of you didn't have any secrets from each other at the time?
I can't say that.
But you certainly shared confidences, correct?
We did.
And in fact, you spoke with Angela about going out with Phil Spector in New York, didn't you?
I did.
Spoke with her many times about it, correct?
I did.
You were very excited about it, weren't you?
Excited about talking to
About
her.
going out with Phil Spector.
I enjoyed going out with him.
Yes. You told your sister that you were very excited about going out with him because he was, in your eyes, a celebrity, correct?
I did not know he was a celebrity.
You learned about who he was once you started to see him, isn't that true?
He told me who he was.
I didn't ask you that. Here's the question. You learned about who...
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm not so sure that that is not responsive. I'm going to allow it to stand.
You also learned from other sources who he was in the music industry, correct?
No.
Well, who was Ahmet Ertegun?
The owner of Atlantic Records.
You knew him when you were in New York, living there with your sister
Yes, sir.
Angela, correct? You spoke with him about Phil Spector, didn't you?
Objection, date is the time when.
Can you be more specific?
Yes, we'll get there. Can this just be the foundational question then I'll
All
ask?
right.
You spoke with Mr. Ertegun about Phil Spector. In fact, on more than one occasion, isn't that true?
That's true.
And that was in social settings during that period of time that you were living there, that year and a half, correct?
Yes, sir.
You spoke to him before you went out with Phil Spector. You spoke to him during the time that you went out with Phil Spector about him, correct?
No, that's not correct.
Kind of irrelevant.
He,
There's two different periods of time here.
well, actually, that's right. The question was asked before the answer came in the second question. Sustain. You may break it down.
Okay. Before you went out with Mr. Spector, you spoke with Ahmet Ertegun about Mr. Spector, correct?
No.
And you're absolutely sure that you never did that?
Talked to Ahmed before I went out to Spitville? No, I did not.
You spoke with him after you started going out with Mr. Spector, correct?
Correct.
About Mr. Spector, right?
We talked about Phil some, yes.
You wanted to know about Phil Spector, didn't you? And that's why you asked him about him.
No, our conversations about Phil wasn't about any of the records that he produced or who he worked with.
Did you know the name Phil Spector before you first went out with him?
No, sir.
Once you started going out with him, you learned that he was a giant in the music industry, correct?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustain.
After you started going out with him, you learned that he had some celebrity status. Isn't that true? And that was one of the things that attracted you to him.
Objection assumes fact is not evidence with respect to this witness.
Well, is it leading? Yes, but it's also cross-examination.
No, I was, assumes fact's not evidence. That she knew that he had celebrity status.
And she can say no. I'm going to allow the form of the question and she can answer whatever is appropriate. You may proceed.
You may answer.
Would you repeat the question?
Did you learn that Mr. Spector had celebrity status after you began dating him? Was that the question, Mr.?
Yes, sir. After I began dating.
Okay.
And once you learned that, you didn't stop seeing him, did you? You continued to see him socially after you learned that from Mr. Erdogan.
Yes, sir. I didn't learn that from Mr. Ernigan.
Well, let me ask this. Once you learned that piece of information, you didn't stop seeing him. You continued to see him, correct?
I did because I enjoyed going out with him.
And also you enjoyed the perks. For example, the restaurants he took you to, correct? You enjoyed going to the restaurants?
Yes, sir.
You enjoyed the limousines, correct?
Yes, sir.
You enjoyed the fact that he paid for a ticket for you to come to California before this purported incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
He sent you gifts, cards, things of that nature. He was very generous with you, wasn't he?
He was.
You liked that, didn't you?
It was nice.
You have another sister named Kathy, don't you?
I did.
Okay. Now, Kathy visited you and Angela when you would go to New York, but she didn't really live with you there. It was just Angela, correct?
Correct.
And, excuse me. You have testified here today to an incident that occurred in California, correct? And I think you indicated that occurred when?
Going to Pasadena?
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly when it was. I just know that it was after I had eye surgery, which would have been in November of 92.
Okay. And after that, you returned to New York, correct?
Right.
You were provided, pardon me, you were provided a ticket. You were driven from the hotel to the airport. You got on the airplane and you flew back home to New York.
Yes, sir.
And at that time, that was the home that you were residing at with Angela, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you got back home, you continued to live with Angela until you moved from New York back to Georgia. Isn't that right?
I didn't move back to Georgia,
Where did you move to after you left New York?
to San Diego.
Sustained.
Okay. You moved somewhere else, correct?
Right.
All right. And were you and Angela still living together at that time? No, you had separated, right?
Well, she got married.
Correct. And how long did you and Angela live together in New York after you returned from California before the two of you left New York?
Objection of relevancy, Your Honor. Why is this important?
The only possible relevancy would be things that were discussed on the bench, but possible statements. If they don't come in, it's harmless. If they do come in, it gives some basis for when the conversations took place. So for the amount of time it's taking, the objection is overruled.
Then you can answer the question.
She moved back to Georgia after a year and a half of living with me, and then I lived by myself for another year and a half.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, how long did the two of you continue to live together once you returned from California after your 19-hour stay out here? Was it a matter of 6 months, 8 months, 3 months? How many more months did the two of you continue to live together?
Maybe another month, if that.
Okay. And during that month, nothing had changed in your relationship with her. You were still good friends, right?
Right.
By the way, that eye surgery, that was to correct your vision, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Who paid for that?
I paid for half, and Phil gave me a check for the other half.
So that you could have the surgery, correct?
Right. It was $1,500 per eye. He paid for half of it.
On that note, we have reached the,
Witching hour.
well, quitting hour. We're done. Until tomorrow at 9:30. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition. The witness is instructed to report back tomorrow at 9:30 and not discuss your case with anyone except the attorneys involved in the case. Thank you. You may step down.
No, you did so good last time. I was so proud of myself last time. Now you have to screw it up, Court TV.
For the jurors and alternates or not, did somebody wish to raise an issue?
Your Honor, I just wanted to ask the court from a timing perspective. The court asked yesterday about Stephanie Jennings.
Yes.
Tape.
Yes.
What we proposed to do, if it's okay with the court, is finish up to keep the content with Ms. Grosvenor, finish up with Ms. Grosvenor, and then take a break and outside the presence of the jury, make an offer of proof with regard to the tape. And what I think I reviewed yesterday, my notes about Ms. Jennings' testimony, I believe even outside the presence of the jury, I can make an offer of proof as to the foundation and the timing of the messages.
Okay.
Just do that after Ms. Grosvenor.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
All right, ready to proceed? Sure, that's fine. All right, let's bring in the jurors.
We're going to pick up across the.
All right, the record will reflect the presence of the jurors and the alternates. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for the slight delay this morning. We got the air conditioning working, but that killed one of the computers, so we can't have it all. All right, with that in mind, are we ready to proceed with cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the witness previously sworn and still under oath is again on the stand, and as soon as she is seated, you may resume your cross.
Yesterday, you testified in these proceedings for the very first time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But it was not the first time that you visited the story that you told yesterday. Isn't that true?
That's true.
As a matter of fact, you were prepared by individuals to present your testimony. Isn't that correct?
Well, I told them the story. I don't know if you would say that I was prepared like we were rehearsing it, because we were not. I just told them exactly what happened.
You went over it with them, correct?
Exactly.
Before you testified.
Exactly.
How many times do you think you met with somebody from the government? When I say that, either Mr. Dixon, Mr. Jackson, or law enforcement to discuss your story?
4.
So you reviewed you had 4 different instances when you met with people, went over your story before you hit the witness stand yesterday. That's a fair statement, isn't it?
That's fair. So,
now, as I understand it, you spoke the very first time on October 11th, 2004, with Mr. Bennett and Mr. Daly, 2 Los Angeles County District Attorney investigators, right?
right.
And they met with you face-to-face, vis-a-vis, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you spoke with them for how long?
I don't remember.
Okay. And you discussed your story and the testimony you gave yesterday with them, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, yesterday you testified to a couple of things. And I want to revisit that with you for a moment, if we may, please, Ms. Grosvenor. You indicated that there was an instant in time when Mr. Spector had a weapon and he pointed it at you. And you testified yesterday that he put this gun, this handgun, in a holster. You remember that testimony?
Right.
You also testified yesterday that he was walking back and forth in front of you, correct?
Correct.
And you also went and testified that he was screaming and yelling at you. Is that correct?
Correct.
You further testified about 2 phone calls, one where you actually spoke with him, one where you picked up a message off of your voicemail that retrieved the message on your telephone, correct?
Correct.
I think you indicated that you recall that one of the things that was said is, quote unquote, "I know where you live," right?
Right.
Another thing that you recall is, "You know what I can do," quote unquote, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you met with law enforcement, Mr. Daly, Mr. Bennett, before you started talking with them, they explained to you that they wanted you to be truthful with them, correct?
Correct.
And they told you they wanted you to tell them the entire story, everything you could remember, correct?
Correct.
And that was in 2004, a couple 3 years ago, right?
Right.
When you met with them, you never said anything to them about him putting a gun in a holster, did you? Never mentioned it to him, did you? First time it was mentioned was yesterday, correct?
She answered the question.
That's,
There's 3 questions there.
Have you ever told anyone at the time you had that interview about the holster?
Yes, I did.
okay. And you're positive of that, correct?
Pretty sure, because that's what's happened. That's what happened.
Are you positive of that?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. When you met with Mr. Bennett and Mr. Daly, you did not tell them that Mr. Spector was walking back and forth in front of you with a weapon, did you?
I think I did.
Are you positive?
I don't remember, but I think I did, because that is what happened.
When you met with Mr. Daly and Mr. Bennett, you did not tell him that he was screaming at you and yelling at you constantly, did you?
I don't think I said that yesterday either. He was cursing, and I can't repeat what he's saying because I was so upset. But
Okay.
yes, he was rambling on.
That wasn't my question. My question was, are you positive that you told Mr. Daly and Mr. Bennett in your interview with them that he was screaming and yelling at you constantly?
Objection vague constantly means the whole 19 hours or?
She can answer the question. The objection's over.
Thank you, Your Honor. You may answer, yes or no.
Well, she doesn't have to answer yes or no either, but you can answer the question.
Are you positive you told him that when you met with him in 2004?
I would assume I did. To say I'm positive right now, I don't remember. I just know I told him the truth.
When you met with him in 2004, you did not tell them about any phone calls wherein you allege that Mr. Spector said, quote, I know where you live, close quote, and quote, you know what I can do, close quote. Did you? You never mentioned that to them, did you?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach? This is the proper.
You may resume.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't think we got an answer to the question. Let me rephrase the question. Mrs. Grosvenor, when you met with Mr. Bennett and Mr. Daly in October of 2004, you did not say to them that Mr. Spector spoke the following words, quote, unquote, I know where you live, you know what I can do. You did not tell them that at that time. You spoke it for the first time yesterday in court, correct?
No, that's not correct.
As I understand from your testimony yesterday, you indicated that you came out in 1991 to California, stayed the 19 hours, and then returned to New York. Is that correct?
It wasn't in 91.
When was it?
Late of 92 or early 93.
Do you remember being invited by Mr. Spector to the Rolling Stones 25th anniversary in New York at the Four Seasons Hotel?
I did.
You went as his date, didn't you?
I did.
You remember what year that was?
No.
Do you recall that that was the year after this purported incident that you've testified to?
No, it wasn't.
You're sure of that?
I am sure of that.
Okay. After this incident that occurred, and when again did you say this occurred?
Well, it was after my eye surgery, which would have been after November of 92.
Okay. I think you testified that you did see Mr. Spector, is that correct?
I saw him when he came into where I worked.
I'm sorry?
I saw him when he came into where I worked.
So it is your testimony that you never dated him or went out with him
I did
after
not.
that? You have to let me finish my question. We can't talk at the same time. It's very difficult for the reporter. Okay? That you allege occurred. That you saw Mr. Spector, but only when he would come into the restaurant where you were working. Is that right?
That's right.
So it's your testimony that you never were involved with him romantically thereafter, correct?
Correct.
And you never told anyone that you were ever involved with him romantically at any time. It was a platonic relationship, correct?
Objection vague is the time. You're just.
He said anytime.
Anytime. You may answer.
It was platonic because we never had intercourse.
Wasn't my question.
Well, what's your
My
question?
question is this. Is it your testimony based on yesterday when you described your relationship with Mr. Spector as being platonic, that you have never told anybody, including your sisters, Angela and Kathy, that you had sex with Phil Spector? Is that your testimony?
That is.
How many times do you think you saw Mr. Spector after your trip to Los Angeles?
I'm not sure.
Can you estimate? 10 times, 15 times, 5 times, 30 times?
Probably 10 or so.
And it's your testimony that every one of those were in the restaurant, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is your testimony as to the last time that you saw Phil Spector at the restaurant?
I don't know exactly when the last time was. I just know when I moved from New York.
So you have no recollection today, is that correct?
That's correct.
If I showed you a copy of the raw notes that I don't know if it's Mr. Bennett or Mr. Daly's handwriting, I'm sorry. But if I showed you a copy of the raw notes where there's a notation to that effect from their interview with you, do you think it would assist you in any way in refreshing your memories to when you told them the last time you saw Mr. Spector?
Check to no foundation that she needs her memory refreshed.
Sustained, you may ask it in the appropriate fashion.
If I showed you these notes, do you think it might refresh your memory?
Same objection.
Same ruling that she hasn't shown that she needs her memory refreshed. I think that's what you're missing.
Well, maybe I'm missing something. Did you not let me ask you this way. Do you recall the last time that you saw Mr. Spector in the restaurant?
I don't.
If I showed you notes, might it refresh your memory?
If somebody, I think what counsel was asking is if you saw someone's notes of an interview with you, might it help you recall the date or about the date of the last time you saw Mr. Spector in the restaurant? Would looking at someone else's report of an interview with you help you?
Your Honor, it's not really a report, it's raw notes.
Well, raw notes. I mean, if you see someone else's date on notes or their interpretation or their recollection of what you said, is that going to help you in any way?
Sure.
All right, you may approach.
Actually, it is in the official report, so I'll bring that.
All right. When that's brought up to you, just read it to yourself. Counsel may point out something to you and see if that assists you. If it doesn't, let us know. If it does, you can tell us that as well.
May I, Your Honor?
You may.
Mrs. Grover, I'm going to direct your attention to a two-page report dated October 20th, 2004. The last paragraph on page 2, I'm going to ask you just to read it to yourself as the judges instruct you. Just the last sentence, just read it to yourself. Have you completed that?
I did.
Okay. Does that refresh your memory so that you can now tell us when it was the last time that you saw Mr. Spector? According to this interview report?
It says June of '93.
Objection, that motion strike, that's not, what was that?
Sustained. The question is, having seen that, does that refresh your recollection? I realize there's a date contained there, but does it refresh your recollection?
It really doesn't.
Okay, that answer is stricken about June of '93. You may ask your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. You indicated that, as I understand that, Mr. Spector moved from one hotel to the Waldorf Astoria at some point. Do you remember that testimony?
Right.
Do you recall which hotel he moved from?
I don't.
Do you recall whether or not it was the Ritz-Carlton?
It may have been.
And were you aware of the fact that Mr. Spector had had a long-standing relationship with the management at the Waldorf Astoria?
I don't remember that.
Did you know whether or not that if you don't, you don't?
The objection is sustained. It's argumentative.
I didn't even do anything that time. I didn't type anything. I didn't open up another window. I didn't do anything.
That your relationship with Mr. Spector ended somewhere in 1992, 1993. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it did not end in 1998. Is that right?
Right.
and you never told anybody that you were dating him up until 1998, including your two sisters, Kathy and Angela, correct?
That is correct.
As I understand it, you got married in 1998, didn't you?
I did.
And that was to Mr. Grosvenor?
Yes.
Okay. In the end of, not the end, but towards the end, the fall of the year 2004, specifically October 11th of 2004, do you recall calling your sister Angela and talking to her on the phone?
Objection, relevancy.
Sounds like it's foundational.
It is.
If she's able to answer it at all, because I don't know that she can, but we'll have the witness answer.
I don't remember that.
Okay. Do you recall telling her on or about October 11th of 2004 that you had been interviewed by two Los Angeles District Attorney investigators regarding Phil Spector threatening you with a gun?
I probably did.
Do you remember telling your sister Angela that you were going to testify in this court and you were going to be on court TV?
No, I never said that.
Never said that, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall in a phone conversation with your sister Angela, telling Angela the following: if you testify in the Phil Spector case against me, they're going to put you in jail?
This improper impeachment, hearsay. No foundation.
First of all, why don't you approach the bench and we'll see where you're trying to go. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. Mrs. Grosvenor, I was asking you the following question. Did you have a conversation, a phone conversation with your sister Angela, where you made the following statement? Quote, you told them about the bank embezzlement and the plaque I stole from the judge's home. Did you make that statement to your sister Angela and or Kathy?
Objection, date when?
Give us a time, sustain.
Okay. It's either April or May of this year. I'm not sure. In April or May of this year, in a telephone conversation with Kathy and or Angela, did you make the following statement over the phone? Quote, you told them about the bank embezzlement and the plaque I stole from the judge's home, close quote.
No, that's not what I said. I can tell you what I said.
I didn't ask you that. Did you mention?
Objection. You answered the question.
No, you can ask that on redirect. The answer is, that's not what I said, which is the appropriate answer. And if you want to go into it, you may proceed.
Thank you. In somewhat different language, did you tell in this conversation on the phone to either Kathy or Angela that they told them, referring to the defense team, about your bank embezzlement and the plaque that you stole from the judge's home?
No,
You did steal a plaque from a judge's home in
No.
Georgia, didn't you?
no, I did not.
You're absolutely sure you didn't do that?
I am
Objection,
sure.
asked and answered.
We're done. You may proceed on to your next question.
Did you ever say in April or May of this year to either your sister Angela or your sister Kathy, if you testify against me?
Objection, compound.
Well, because I believe that there's a question of who this may have been said to. So with that understanding,
Correct.
one or the other, the
Thank
witness
you.
can answer that.
Thank you, Your Honor. I repeat, in a phone conversation in April or early May of this year, did you tell either Angela and Kathy, or maybe both of them if they were on the phone, quote, if you testify against me, they're going to put you in jail, close quote?
She wouldn't be testifying against me. I'm not on trial. And what I said
didn't
is
ask
that you're
you.
lying. My
I didn't ask
sister's
you.
a drug addict.
I didn't
And
ask
she's got a
you. Your
vendetta
Honor,
against me.
Just a second, ma'am. Hold
Well-
on. The jury's admonished to disregard that. That's stricken. If you didn't make that statement, just tell the attorney that. You may ask the question again.
Thank you, Your Honor. In a phone conversation in April or May of the year 2007, did you make the statement to either Angela or Kathy, your two sisters, the following, quote, if you testify against me, they're going to put you in jail, close quote? Did you make that statement?
I told her if she lied under oath, then she would go to jail.
Did you make that statement to them?
Not like that, no.
Did you, in this same conversation, tell either Kathy or Angela, your two sisters, that
Compound, it can't be the same conversation, it's two different people we're talking about.
Well, it's possible that both were on the line.
Thank you.
Ask the question a little more carefully. I
Okay.
think it's been made clear that there's some question about any possible statement as to who it was made to, being one, the other, or both of the sisters. So that'll be the understanding. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Okay, with that understanding, did you ever, in April or May of this year, in a phone conversation, state to either Angela and or Kathy or both, quote, "I don't want to testify," close quote? Did you make that statement?
I did.
On April 28th of this year, did you call Kathy's home and leave a blistering message threatening her?
Objection.
The term blistering
Okay,
sustained.
did you leave a message threatening her?
No.
Why is this relevant? Can we move on, please?
You know what the Masters Golf Tournament is?
I do.
You've attended it, haven't you?
Well, I grew up in Augusta. Yes, I have.
Well, you may have grown up there. In 2004, you were in Georgia, weren't you, for the Masters?
Not for the Masters, but I was in Georgia visiting my family.
And court's indulgence for just a quick moment, please.
All right.
You know Judge Carlisle, Carlyle, and his,
This has been asked and answered correctly.
The objection is overruled.
do you know Judge Carlisle, Carlyle, and his wife Shara, Shara, Overstreet, Overstreet, who own a home in the area? Do you know them?
No, I don't.
Have you ever been to their home?
Not to my knowledge.
In 2004, when was the Masters played? I'm not a golfer, so I don't know what time of year it is.
First full week of April.
Do you recall participating in any activities surrounding the golf tournament that occurred in the first week of April in 2004?
Going out to dinner and seeing some friends that were in town for the Masters, yes.
Do you recall going to a judge's house, a judge in Richmond County, Georgia?
I don't know that judge, so I don't know if I was at his house or not.
Do you recall going to a house that had an office type room in it with a desk where there was a plaque 5 inches by 8 inches sitting on an easel on the desk that said the following: "Attitude is everything"?
No.
Is it your testimony that you did not take that plaque?
Yes, sir.
Is it your testimony that you have never admitted to anyone?
Objection. This has been asked and answered at this point.
That has been asked and answered. The objection is sustained.
You don't know the Overstreets?
I do
Judge?
not.
Objection, asked and answered. It's already asked this.
The answer was no. It'll stand.
Thank you.
What is your,
Yes, we have to get through the dull and pointless to get to the good parts. I'm not bored with this. Actually, I am very interested. I just don't know why this is relevant. I'm actually pretty interested. I would like to know why she would have stolen that plaque from the man's desk. But I also want to know why they think she did. I want to know why she embezzled the money. I want to know all about her case. But it's not relevant to this case. I'm very interested in her case. I just don't know why it's relevant. I mean, if they're trying to prove that she tells lies, they've done it. So we can move on. But I'm not bored.
Very best estimate or recollection as to when your relationship with Philip Spector finally ended? 92 or 93?
Probably early 93.
When you say early 93, we're talking January, February, that time period?
Right, January, February, March.
You described a purported alleged incident that occurred here in California. Let me ask you something. Mr. Spector never had you hold a weapon, did he?
He did not.
He never forced you to hold a weapon, did he?
No, he didn't.
He never asked you to hold a weapon along with him, correct?
Correct.
He never had you touch a weapon, did he?
No, he didn't.
He never instructed you to place a weapon into your mouth, did he?
If he had, I would have, because I would have done anything he told me.
No, I didn't ask you
pointing
that.
the gun at me.
Move to strike, Your Honor.
It's stricken, it's non-responsive. The jury's admonished. You may proceed.
Thank you. I'll ask you the question again. He never asked you to take a gun and put it in your mouth, did he?
No, he didn't.
And he never put a gun in your mouth, did he?
No, he didn't.
This weapon that you allege he had that day, you don't even know if it was loaded, do you? I'm not asking you what you assume. You don't know if it was loaded. You never inspected the weapon, did you?
No, I didn't.
And finally, the weapon, of course, was never discharged that day, was it?
I wouldn't be sitting here if it was.
It was never discharged, was it?
I'm sitting here.
I think you've answered the question. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. You weren't going to take a chance on whether it was loaded or not, were you?
No, I wasn't.
And if Mr. Spector had asked you to open your mouth on the gun, would you have done that when he was pointing what you thought was a loaded gun at you?
Yes, I would have.
You were scared to death. Isn't that fair?
I was very scared.
Now, Mr. Rosen asked you a number of times, when did this relationship end? Do you recall that?
I did.
Did it end when he pointed the gun in your face?
That's exactly when it ended.
And in fact, within hours, you went back to New York, correct?
Yes, sir.
That was the only thing on your mind, is to get away from him and get back to New York, to your home.
That's right.
He also asked you if you told somebody in the past that you didn't want to come testify. Is that right?
That's right.
Because that was a true statement.
That's true.
You didn't volunteer to come here and testify.
No, I didn't.
It was because those DA investigators knocked on your door and talked to you, and right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then you got a subpoena.
That's right.
You didn't want to have to face this.
I did not.
You were asked a number of questions about Angela. Who is Angela?
One of my sisters.
What's your relationship with her?
Now. I'm sorry.
The question is, what is your relationship with her now? I believe you had it. Now was the last word. Right.
We don't have a relationship now because she's a drug addict that I've tried to help.
Object to this.
The question was, we don't have a relationship now. Right now, that will be the answer. The rest is stricken. The jury is admonished.
Why don't you have a relationship now?
Objection, relevance.
I'm going to allow it.
You can answer.
Well, because she's a drug addict and I've tried to help her, put her in rehab. She wouldn't stay in rehab. And I've stopped giving her money. So she is mad at me for that. And I think she's getting money now from Spector. And that's why she's doing this against me.
But at least from what you know, she has repeatedly asked you for money, and
I've cut her off.
And she's angry about that.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Wait. She's angry about that.
I think the witness is capable of offering an opinion on that. If that's an objection, it's overruled.
And she's expressed that anger to you?
She has.
Lastly, Mr. Rosen asked you a number of questions about what you did or did not say to Brian Bennett and the other DA investigator. Based on, let me withdraw that and ask you this. Do you have a clear recollection of that morning in Phil Spector's home after you said, "I want to go home," and he pointed the gun in your face?
I do.
Vivid recollection?
I do have a very vivid recollection.
Was he yelling at you?
He was.
Profanities?
Your Honor, objection has been asked and answered.
No, but however you went into it in your cross, and the district attorney is allowed to go back into it and redirect. You may proceed, it's overruled.
Do you have any doubt that he was pointing a gun just inches from your head, yelling profanities at you and telling you if you moved, he would kill you? Is there any doubt about that in your mind?
There's no doubt.
And that you were sobbing and crying and very upset?
That's correct.
And that he had a shoulder holster with him and eventually put the gun in the holster and tapped on it and continued to yell at you?
That's correct.
No doubt that that happened.
There's no doubt.
And that's when your relationship ended, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, nothing further.
Thank you, recross.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon just asked you some questions about the fact you're here because you're subpoenaed to be here, correct?
Correct.
And we've pretty much fixed the date that your first conversation with law enforcement was with Mr. Daly and Mr. Bennett, two Los Angeles County District Attorney investigators that occurred in October of 2004, correct?
Correct.
This incident occurred in 92, is that right?
End of 92 or early 93.
So from the end of 1992 or the beginning of 1993
Right.
till October of 2004, over a decade, over 10 years, you never spoke to anybody in law enforcement about this, did you?
No, I didn't.
You indicated that you've distanced yourself from your sister Angela because she's a drug addict, correct?
Correct.
Well, you've used cocaine with her in the past, haven't you?
No, I have not.
It
I'm sorry? Nothing? All right.
is your testimony that you've never used cocaine with Angela or Kathy?
Answered at this point. She answered it. and she
I said
did.
Angela or Kathy.
If you're changing the question is, have you ever used cocaine with Kathy?
No.
And you're not now and never have been a drug addict, particularly.
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect.
Thank you, nothing further, Your Honor.
Subject to recall, you're excused. You're admonished not to discuss your testimony with anyone except counsel present in the courtroom or their representatives. You may step down, and thank you for being here. Do you have another witness?
Your Honor, at this time, this may be a good time to address the matter that I brought up to the court outside the presence of the jury.
All right, you want to take want the jurors to go back in the jury room?
Well, that's up to you.
Well, I'd prefer that. Not that I don't want to see them. Ladies and gentlemen, keeping in mind the admonition, I get you ready. Next week is Juror Appreciation Week. Get excited. Let the excitement begin. And with that in mind, if you would step back in the jury room, we'll call you as soon as we're ready. Alternates have retired to the jury room. Mr. Jackson?
Your Honor, very simply, I don't want to belabor the point.
Okay.
Yesterday, we talked about playing the tape that has two phone messages from Philip Spector to Stephanie Jennings. I went back yesterday afternoon after we visited in the late afternoon, tape, et cetera. I went back, looked at my notes in very detailed. I did ask her specifically after the 1996 invitation to his birthday party. did Philip Spector, well, I asked, did you attend the birthday party? No, I didn't. I stood him up, were her words.
Here, I'll get you the exact words.
Okay.
Hold on a second, I've got yesterday's transcript.
Okay. Okay, that'd be great.
It was in the afternoon session, you believe?
You know what, I can't remember.
All right, that's all right. It was during your examination or redirect?
I think it may have been during my direct.
Okay. Just a second. I think you're looking for 2203, page
I was just
22.
looking at 2202 and 2203. I think
Okay.
that's it.
All right.
Where are we, 2202?
If you look at 2203, you'll get right to the
It's right
point.
to the point, right. As a matter of fact, from line 11 to line 14, she specifies what her recollection of the messages were in relation to that.
All right. I want to look at the cross as well for a second. That'll help me. All right, you may proceed, Mr. Jackson, with your argument.
Thank you. Sorry, very simply, to kind of echo what I indicated yesterday, these phone messages go directly to corroborate her statements that she did in fact receive an invitation to the birthday party, that she did in fact stand him up, and that he then changed into a different person. As a matter of fact, I think her words were that he had a tendency to change into a different Phil. The defense has consistently put into issue and did with their cross-examination of Ms. Jennings, the defendant's character, his demeanor, the fact that he was a kind, gentle soul. He treated her well, he treated her with respect. She then talks about the other Phil when he snapped in the Carlisle Hotel incident, pulled a gun on her, when he snapped when she didn't show up at his birthday party. And this is corroborative evidence of that. Again, to echo what I said yesterday, I think it perpetrates a fraud on the jury to leave them with the impression that Phil Spector is this nice guy who sends little cartoons of baby raccoons to the women that he dates, pulls out chairs, gives them drivers, buys them dinner, leaves big tips, without corroborating what these women are actually saying, which is there are two sides to this man. Public persona, if you will, and then when in private, when he doesn't get his way, when he turns petulant, he turns into a different person. And this is absolutely corroborative of her statements, Stephanie Jennings' statements, that in fact, pursuant to the stand-up, if you will, pursuant to the jilt that he felt, he left her these messages on the phone. I think that's why it's relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen.
Your Honor, I'm looking at my notes, which may or may not be as good as Mr. Jackson's notes. I still have the same exact problems with these that we had before. First of all, as I understand it, the incident that she testified to, the alleged incident, occurs in January of '95. We have two separate calls. Maybe I'm missing something here, but the only way I can pinpoint those calls, as I showed the court, the date in the call before, which was a call from the assistant, pinpointing it December 24th, which could precede this. So I don't think you've got the foundation, as I've said.
Well, the calls authenticate themselves because of the content. The witness has testified as to what was said. The call is exactly that.
If I may.
All right.
I think that there is another reasonable possibility here.
Okay.
Other than that it authenticates the call, because we don't know that it authenticates the call. We don't know that the language used in those two calls references back to the incident that occurred or allegedly occurred on January '95. Okay. One.
Yes.
The problem you have here, Judge, is the same thing as I said before. There's kind of a hyper leak here over a very wide, which is A, the government's theory is this incident occurred. B, we've got two tape messages and the subject matter messages relate back to the incident. There's a period of time between them.
And my point is, I don't think that they have proven or shown that it does relate to that.
The calls don't relate to the incident at the car lot. They relate to this, is that correct? It relates to the birthday conversation, which the witness testified to. It's not being offered that the people aren't contending that Mr. Spector made these calls in relationship to what the witness testified to at the Carlisle. What they're talking about is the post relationship, which has been raised between Mr. Spector and Miss Jennings. And afterwards, although and you have pointed out, and I was looking at your cross-examination, although you didn't go very far, you talked about the last time they had contact. This would be, your cross would be 2244. Okay, starting with line 12. I believe that's the incident that the witness testified to. Is that correct? If I'm wrong, please tell me.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct.
Okay, she testified during, yes?
Okay, so you're referencing 11 through 23.
Yes. And then we go back to her testimony on direct, and I gave you the page, which was, do you recall that page number? When she describes
2203.
2203, thank you. And let me just read you what she testified to.
No, I have.
Okay.
I've read 2203.
And those calls are completely consistent with their testimony. So go ahead and make your argument there. This is what the calls go to. You're self-authenticating.
I understand. We still contend that they should be inadmissible on 352 balancing grounds, probative value versus prejudicial effect. Secondly, if the court is disinclined to embrace the defense position on this, then I'm going to ask the court to give a limiting instruction before their play to the jury indicating that these do not relate to the Carlisle incident, but relate to the fact, as I think was brought out, that she stood him up for his birthday party.
I have no problem. Everyone's in agreement. They're not talking about the Carlisle incident, and I'll tell the jury that, but there's lots of things that can be argued. My limiting instruction would go that these are about a testimony that she gave concerning this invitation that she got and when she didn't show up. Right. That's not a problem. All right.
I have no problem with that.
I've considered your 352 objection, and clearly the language is very strong. However, cross-examination attacked her credibility generally. The nature of this post-incident relation, and it corroborates her general credibility because basically she's testified to an event that the tapes now absolutely corroborate. So for all of those reasons, and considering 352, I find that the probative value far outweighs its prejudicial value in this particular case, and I will allow the people to play those tapes. All right, and I will give the instruction as to what it references, and the jury will be told that.
I would ask the court if the court would be inclined to give the limiting instruction before we play the tapes.
Yes, I'm going to.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Your Honor, I have a set of transcripts. I think I have enough to go. I've handed them to several
Okay.
counsel, so let me count them real
All
quick.
right, you go ahead and do that. We'll take about another 5 minutes because when the jurors come back, we're going to go straight through till noon, assuming we have witnesses.
Yes,
All right,
Judge.
we'll be in a brief recess.
Thank you.
Back on the record, defendant is present with his counsel. The district attorneys are present. The jurors and alternates are present. Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, before we call our next witness, as a matter of housekeeping, I'd like to play a tape of two messages. I believe the court was going to inform.
Yes.
the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, the conversations that are going to be played for you relate to the following testimony. The witness, Stephanie Jennings, as you may recall, and if you don't, I'll remind you, testified that after the incident in the Carlisle, sometime later, she testified to being invited to a certain party by Mr. Spector and then not going. And these conversations relate to that party. It took place after the incident at the Carlisle. It does not describe the incident in the Carlisle. It's about this other matter, and counsel will argue to you at a later time as to what they believe the importance of these conversations are. All right, Mr. Rosen? Yes? Yes?
May I, Your Honor?
Yes. You have transcripts that you wish to mark?
I do.
Your next in order would be 7.
I handed Wendy the one that will
Okay.
actually mark as a people's exhibit, and I'll go ahead and publish the copies
All right.
to the jurors.
Yes.
Maybe have our assistant take the witness stand just to play that. Hey, we tested this while you were gone, and we think that one works better.
That's fine. She won't be
I
cross-examined.
was just saying, it's our only chance to cross-examine.
All
We've
right.
been trying for years.
Yeah, your witness, Mr. Jackson, it wouldn't be your cross, it would be mine.
Fair enough.
No questions.
Okay. What about, do you want to mark the tape or CD itself?
Your Honor, however you would like to mark it, if you can be next in order, people's 8.
All right.
Thank you. It's a cassette tape.
Thank you.
The transcript is 7. This is going to be 8.
Your Honor, you're going to mark the transcript on this, even though they'll be collected afterwards.
We only mark 1. We mark people's 7. Yes. That's 7 is the transcript, 8 is the cassette
8
tape.
is the tape.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this
It's okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Counsel, anybody has a copy of the transcript?
If you have an extra one.
Sure.
Please.
Two extra weeks.
Oh, I'm here. No, take it.
It's hot whenever you're ready.
Jennings, I fucking transferred your messages. You got 7 of them, okay? Constant when you fucking call in. You're a fucking asshole. You never fucking was in New York. You never fucking showed up. And fucking we called you 16 fucking times. We're fucking somebody else. Go fuck yourself, Jennings. Last time I'm gonna say it, I picked up all your 7 fucking messages now, and I'll do every fucking thing in my power to make sure you don't work anymore and somebody else here. In any event, it was really nice knowing you, but you're a fucking asshole and you're a fucking lying cunt. So don't fuck with me, because you can get fucked around with if you do. Never shovel it with a shovel, kid, because I'll fucking put you out of business. I'm gonna try real hard to do so, and I guarantee you I will. You know who this is. Trust me, I'm that good at what I do. Goodbye, kid. Go fuck yourself.
With that, Your Honor, we would, we're finished with the tape and the transcript. I'll collect the transcripts.
Thank you.
Tape, transcript, and we'll call our next witness as soon as I gather everything from the jurors.
All right. Thank you.
AIS.
Okay, we are finally to the night in question. Finally. You see, I was going to type that, but now that we have a break, I can say it. You see what he said? Like, what did he say? I'll effing ruin you or something. I forgot the exact wording. But he threatens them with their career because he has contacts everywhere. Like, and he picked, I don't know if he picked women that he could ruin their career on purpose or if it just was he met them in those because he was in those circles. But that was always, like if you're invited to somebody's birthday party and then you say, yeah, I'll be there, and then you change your mind and you don't want to go, you usually don't get a call that you're an effing see you next Tuesday and I'm going to ruin you, Like, that's what he did. That's not normal. I think he did this. I don't know if he had a Napoleon complex. I don't know if he was just that insecure. Like, I don't know what this man's problem is, but that's not normal. So this woman, her name is Rami Davis, I think. She was, remember the night that he met Lana Clarkson, they were at the House of Blues. He was with a platonic friend. There was no romance involved. They're just a platonic friend. And this is, yeah, it's about time. So this is a friend that he was with. So we finally are getting to the night in question.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Rami Davis, Rommie Davis.
Thank you. If you sit back and pull the microphone underneath your chin, you won't have to lean forward. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Davis.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. I'd like to ask you, do you know Phil Spector?
Yes, I do.
Do you see him here in court?
Yes.
Could you point to him just for the record and tell the judge what he's now wearing?
Brown shirt and little ascot scarf.
Indicating Mr. Spector for the record.
Thank you. When did you first meet Phil Spector? Long time ago?
Long time ago, we went
Okay.
to high school together.
Okay. We're here in Los Angeles?
Fairfax High School here in LA.
Okay. And after high school, did you go your separate ways?
Pretty much.
Did there come a time in 2002 when you met up again?
Actually, we had frequent reunions, and he did show up at many of the reunions over the years. During those events, I didn't ever have an opportunity to speak with him. He was always surrounded by fans and admirers. And so I did see him on those occasions, but we didn't really speak. It wasn't until the year 2002 that we actually spoke at the reunion.
And the reunions you were talking about were Fairfax High School reunions?
Right.
Like all high schools, or I guess most, you have a 10 and a 15 and et cetera.
We had a great class. We had reunions almost every other year.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of parties.
We did.
Okay. So in June, it was June of 2002?
Yes.
And at that high school reunion for Fairfax High, you did have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Spector again, is that right?
Yes.
And as a result of that, did you resume a friendship?
As a result of that conversation, he had one of the bodyguards that was with him walk over to me and hand me a little note and tell me that Philip would like to invite me to come to dinner. And it was on the note, and to call his assistant and confirm.
And did you accept the note and call the assistant
I did.
and go out to dinner?
Following week, I did.
And go out to dinner with her?
Yes.
And was that the start of a casual friendship, dating relationship?
It was, yes, it was a friendship, and we would go to dinner.
How would you characterize it, that friendship?
A good friendship. We enjoyed each other's company. I found him very bright and very interesting, and a fun person to go to dinner with.
And during the period of time from when you met him in June of 2002 at the Fairfax High School reunion, or you talked with him again, until February of 2003, how often did you see him? How many times a week or a month, or can you characterize it for us?
Maybe once or twice a month, which would mean every few weeks. He went to Europe for a period of time. I was working a great deal, and my business took me on the road, so I was not always here all the time either. So it was intermittent.
But when you could, or one person called the other, you went out to dinner. Is that fair to say?
Right. He would call, or I would call and say I was back in town, and we would have dinner.
Now, Ms. Davis, I'd like to invite your attention to February 2nd of 2003, a date that I'm sure you recall now.
Yes.
Did you have dinner plans with the defendant, Phil Spector?
Is that Friday night, or which is that?
No, this
Friday
is Sunday night, Sunday, February 2nd of 2003.
Okay. I had dinner with him Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday night of that weekend.
All three nights that weekend?
Mhm.
Is
Which
that
is very
yes?
unusual, but that's what happened.
Well, we're talking about Sunday night,
Specifically Sunday night.
correct?
Yes,
That's what you have in mind.
right.
We don't need to know exactly where you live, but generally what part of the city did you live in at that time?
I live in Studio City.
And he came and picked you up?
I I think he came with a driver and they picked me up, which was how it usually was when we went out. There would be a driver who would come and pick me up. On some occasions, Philip drove the car.
But on this occasion, Sunday, February 2nd,
He came with a driver.
came to your house in Studio City. Is that correct?
Yes.
About what time do you recall?
No, I would say maybe 7:30-ish, I'm not sure.
And where did you go after that?
We went to Trader Vic's. No, I'm sorry. We went there on Friday night. We went to the Grill in the Alley Sunday.
Your Honor, we have an exhibit we'd like to put up. And I'd ask that it be marked as People's 9 for identification. Actually, it's just a little map of
All right.
the area, and we have a hard copy for it.
So marked.
I'm sorry, get the exhibit.
People's 9.
I believe that's next in order.
It is
correct?
next in order.
Thank you. We have that up. Well, maybe we'll use the alternative right here.
Certainly.
Ms. Davis, can you see that at all up there? It's hard for me to see, so I need to ask you.
Not really well, no.
Okay. Well, it's a map of Los Angeles, and on one end here, as we look at the right side, we see Castle at 1700 Grandview. Do you see that?
Yes,
And at the time that we're talking about, that's where the defendant Phil Spector lived, right?
yes,
And then he picked you up and went to a place called, what, the Grill in Beverly Hills?
the Grill in the Alley, I think they call it.
And so if he picked you up around 7:30, maybe you got there around 8 o'clock for dinner, is that correct?
I'm estimating, but that would be reasonable, yes.
And do you recall what you had and what he had for dinner?
No, I don't remember what we had for dinner.
Would it refresh your memory to look at the receipt? Do you think that helped?
If you want me to, I can. I have no idea.
Okay. Your Honors, our next exhibit we have, and I have a hard copy here, a receipt from the Grill on the Alley, and may that be marked as People's 10 for identification.
So marked.
That's a little hard to see too, isn't it? Can we blow that up? Yeah. One moment, please.
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
Do you recall whether or not during dinner you had anything to drink?
I don't drink, and I don't think I had anything to drink that night, but I think Philip had a drink.
Okay. And what is your best recollection that he had to drink? Or if you're not sure, we'll try to refresh your recollection.
Philip had, I think, 2 drinks that night,
Okay. Do you recall what they were?
daiquiris.
Okay. So he had a couple daiquiris. Up there we see, this is a blow up, Miss Davis, we have up here on the screen.
The ginger ale sounds like me.
The ginger ale sounds like you. How about the
Yes.
Diet Coke?
No, that might have been Philip.
Okay. And then we see a daiquiri. I think I can't tell whether there's 1 or 2 up there, but your recollection is he may have had 2 daiquiris. Is that correct?
Yes,
And how about for dinner? I think you said you weren't sure, but maybe prime rib, something like that?
I don't think I was prime rib.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, we see 2 prime ribs up there,
Okay,
but if you don't recall, that's fine.
no, I don't, I'm sorry.
So is it fair to say that you had a pleasant evening at the Grill at the Alley?
No.
No.
Do you want me to explain?
You usually had pleasant evenings with the defendant.
I
Is that
was
correct?
concerned about Philip because he was doing something that he had not done ever before. And all the time that I was with him, which was he had alcoholic beverage. Philip did not usually drink when I went out with him.
Prior to this evening, the Sunday, February 2nd, when you'd gone out to dinner during the period of time we talked about, you're saying that he hadn't drank.
The alcohol consumption appeared for the first time Friday night, and it occurred again on Saturday and then on Sunday. Prior to that, he did not ever consume alcohol with me.
With you.
Mm-mm.
Is that yes?
Yes, correct.
And that would have been from the period of time from June of 2002 until the day we're now talking about, February 2003. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Is that a
Right.
yes, ma'am?
Yes.
The reporter is unable to
I'm
take that.
sorry.
It's okay.
I'll try
Everybody
to
does it,
remember.
and we tell everybody that, so don't worry.
So my earlier question to you, did you have a pleasant evening? You said no, right?
Well, I was very concerned about him.
Did you express that concern?
Yes, because I knew he took certain medication, and I knew that mixing alcohol and medication is a lethal combination, and I was very concerned.
Just generally speaking, not with, in particular with him, but just everybody kind of knows that. You take medication, you take alcohol, you don't know what's going to happen.
Correct.
Okay. And you were concerned about it.
Yes.
Did you express that concern to Phil Spector that night?
Yes, I did.
Just once or repeatedly?
Probably both times he ordered the drinks.
And what, if any, was his response?
He was not his usual self.
Well, it's responsive, but it needs further explanation. When you say he was not his usual self, what do you mean by that?
I don't remember exactly word for word what he said, but he wasn't interested in what I had to say. Can I explain this?
You may.
I'll ask you another question and try to let you explain it, okay? In the past, when you dated with him, I think you said he was an interesting man.
And all the time I went out with him, he was interesting and great fun and somebody wonderful to talk with. And from time to time, people would stop at the tables where we had dinner, and they would tell him how much they admired him. And it was fun to see all the people that recognized him and came to tell him how they remembered him from their childhood and how much they cared about his work. And then this particular weekend was the first time ever that the behavior was completely and totally different. And it began the first night, and I was very concerned. And he didn't want to hear what I had to say. I said, Philip, please don't drink. You take medication. You shouldn't be mixing this. And he didn't hear me.
Prior to that.
Just a second, Mr. Dixon. I'm going to ask you to do something that's probably difficult. I realize in recalling you're doing it the best that you can, but you're speaking very fast. The
Oh,
court reporter has to take down everything that you
I'm
say. It's
sorry.
very hard for her. So if you can slow it down a bit, I'd appreciate it.
I will. Forgive me.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So prior to this weekend, this really first weekend in February of 2003, he'd been a person, I think you're telling us, who was receptive to listening to what you had to say and others had to say.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Was asking.
Overruled.
Is that correct or not?
Would you rephrase the
Okay,
question,
I'll try.
please?
Prior to this weekend that you're telling us about, the Friday, Saturday, and now Sunday,
Right.
when you went out with him, are you telling us that Phil Spector was a person who generally was interested in what you had to say and others had to say?
Yes, he was great. He was a perfectly ordinary, typical person, and he was great company.
And now on this weekend, particularly the Sunday that we're now talking about, because of his drinking, he changed.
Okay, but I would have to say that for the record, it began Friday night and it occurred again on Saturday. And so something was terribly wrong.
Okay, everything from it occurred again on Sunday, something that where it starts, the answer started with something was whatever. That's stricken. The jury's admonished to disregard it. You may ask your next question.
Thank you. The subject of Phil Spector's drinking on the Sunday night that we're now talking about, is that something you just brought up once, or did you bring it up repeatedly during the dinner?
I probably brought it up when he was ordering the drinks.
So if he ordered 2 drinks, then maybe 2 times.
Yes,
And was that, to the best you could recall now, the extent of your comments about his drinking, at least on that night?
probably, yes.
Did you make the same or similar type comments to Phil Spector on the 2 previous nights that you were with him, Saturday and Friday night, when he ordered alcohol?
Yes.
And what was his response to your kind of suggestion that, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this?
Your Honor, it's been asked.
Overruled.
He just didn't agree. He wasn't angry. He just didn't agree and did what he wanted to do.
Now, at some point, your dinner concluded, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And what happened then?
We got ready to go home. And he got the car and we got in the car and went back. And he dropped me off.
So the car and driver was brought to the restaurant.
Right,
You got into it and were taken back to Studio City, is that correct?
right, correct.
And did that conclude at least your evening with Phil Spector on Sunday, February 2nd?
Yes, that was it.
Now, on that night or any of the previous nights that you'd been with Phil Spector since the 2002 Fairfax High reunion, had there ever been any conversation about a gun or a gun permit?
None.
As far as you knew, he didn't own a gun or didn't have a gun permit?
Never mentioned, never brought up in conversation.
Could I have a moment, please, Your Honor?
You may.
As you've sat there and I've given you a moment, and I'm looking for a note too,
I know what it is.
do you recall anything now about the gun?
The first time he came to my house to pick me up,
I believe it is responsive.
I think so, Your Honor.
The objection's overruled if it turns out it's not all striking. You may proceed.
the first time that he drove in the car with me, he said to me very politely right at the beginning when he picked me up that I want you to know that I carry a gun in the trunk of my car, that I keep it for situations where it might be necessary to have it. And I just know that I'm legally responsible for telling you and informing you so that if you don't want to be in the car with me under those conditions, you have that option. And something like that. And I remember that I had never had an experience like that before with anyone. And I remember feeling impressed that he had advised me of its existence in the trunk of the car. And it was never, ever, ever mentioned again.
And when was this from, if you can tell us at all, from your relationship with him starting in 2002 after the reunion until the Sunday we're now talking about?
That event when he had the gun in the
Yes.
car, it would have been shortly, so it would have been July, probably maybe August, somewhere in then, because many times he came in the car with the driver, but this was one time when he came alone, first time he ever came to pick me up.
So it was early on.
Just a second, I'm going to ask you again if you can just try to
I've
slow down.
talked too
I know
fast.
I know it's,
I work in television where you have to talk really fast to get it all in, so you have to forgive me.
we'll give you all the time you need, okay? No deadlines, go ahead.
So Phil Spector's comments to you about the gun and the permit were early on in the relationship
Yes.
after the high school reunion.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nothing further at this time.
Thank you, cross-examination. All right, we'll give you a moment. No problem.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Your preference, please, in addressing you, Miss, Mrs., or Ms.?
Miss Davis is fine.
Miss? Okay. Good morning, Miss Davis, and welcome.
Good morning, thank you.
I'm Mr. Rosen. I'm one of Mr. Spector's lawyers. I'm going to ask you a few questions here, okay?
Hello, Mr. Rosen, thank you.
Okay. You've known Phil for a very long time, haven't you?
High school,
Okay. And that's Fairfax High School
Fairfax High School,
here in Los Angeles.
here in Los Angeles.
I'm not going to tell you where I went to high school because I was one of the rivals in the Western League.
Oh,
I was one of your rivals, but we always lost to you guys.
that's
Okay.
cool.
All right. Ms. Davis, I want to talk to you a little bit about that evening, okay? February 2nd.
Yes,
All right. You'll have to answer out loud, not when I'm talking, and I won't talk here, but you must answer out loud when you raise your head up and down or to the side. Cindy, who is an excellent reporter, can't get that down in the machine, okay?
okay.
All right. I know it's just a little new for you, isn't it?
Yes,
Are you a little nervous,
yes,
or are you very nervous?
I would say a little.
Okay. Well, we don't bite here, and just take it easy, take a deep breath, and we'll be fine, okay?
Okay,
Now, as I understand it, you had plans with Mr. Spector for that evening, correct? That Sunday evening?
yes,
He didn't just drop in out of nowhere. You had prearranged to go to dinner with him.
yes, that's correct.
Did you know where you were going to dinner that evening?
Probably,
Mr. Spector is an individual who likes to frequent the same restaurants. Isn't that true? He has a few that are his favorites.
Yes, we all have our comfort zones in restaurants where we feel comfortable, so I would say yes.
Okay. And you felt that you were going to one of those restaurants that evening. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes,
And in fact, you did. You went to the Grill on the Alley, correct?
yes,
And the Grill on the Alley is just what it says. The front door is right on the alley there, isn't it, off of the main street?
exactly.
And you'd been there before, hadn't you?
Yes, many times.
You'd been there with Phil before.
With
correct?
him and with other people, yes.
Okay. Alone and also with others, correct?
I've been there with others. I've never been there alone.
Okay, when I say alone, I mean, I should have rephrased. You and Phil have gone there previously, and you've also been there with others.
Yes.
All right.
That's correct.
And as I understand it, you arrived there about what time?
I'm not sure. I would say 7:30 would be reasonable.
Okay.
I'm somewhere in that vicinity.
And how long were you there for?
I guess a couple of hours. I'm not sure.
All right. So it would be your guess that you left there about what time?
I would guess that I'll go in reverse. I would guess that I left there probably around 9:30
9:30. Okay.
or maybe later, a little bit later. I'm not sure. I think maybe 10 o'clock, because I think I got home at around 11:15 that night. So I'm going to say that I think I got home around 10. We must have left there around 10 in order to get me home around 11:15, because they had to call for the car and wait for the valets to bring the car. So I would say that would be approximately what I think. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. That's why I said take a deep breath. Slow down. You're running, we have an expression, you're running Cindy off the boards, which means she can't get it. You're going just too quickly, okay? And that means the jury's not getting it either, and they're the most important ones to hear it, okay? If I suggested to you that the receipt indicates that the receipt was called for at 10:17 p.m., the receipt from the Grill, does that sort of put it in context?
That works for me.
Okay. So you got picked up at what time?
7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay. You were there a good 2 or 3 hours, right? 2.5 hours.
Yes,
Okay. And it was over the 2 that you recall that Mr. Spector may have had ordered 2 daiquiris, correct?
yes, correct.
We'll talk about that in a second. I just wanted to set the time frame. Okay, so you're at dinner for 2.5 hours. And other than the fact that you were concerned about him mixing alcohol and medication, the rest of the evening was a lovely evening, wasn't it?
No,
Okay. Let me ask you this. At any time in the middle of that evening, did you get up and leave? You did not, did you?
no, I didn't leave.
Okay. Was there anyone else at your table? There was not. It was just you and Phil, correct?
Yes, just the two of us.
All right. And during the time that the two of you were there, I think you did have dinner, correct?
Yes, we had dinner.
All right. And Mr. Dixon showed you the receipt and asked you about prime rib. I want to ask you about some other things. Do you recall Mr. Spector eating what they call a lobster martini? But it's not a drink. It's lobster in a martini glass. You remember them sending that over to him as a gift?
I think that was sent over.
Right.
I remember that, yes.
Okay. And he ate that, correct?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
You have no recollection, even though the receipt indicates 2 prime rib dinners were ordered at $35 each? Actually, $35.
Yes, I think the prime rib dinner is correct.
Okay. And you had one and Phil had the other, correct?
Yes,
And you recall also a dessert being ordered, a dessert of apple pie with added ice cream?
sounds like me.
Okay. You like that dessert, huh?
Ice cream.
Okay, yeah. Who doesn't with a sweet tooth? At any rate, you recall having that and Mr. Spector having dessert along with you?
I don't remember if he had dessert along with me, but I do remember that I ordered that.
Okay, he could have, you just don't recall.
I don't recall.
Okay, but he had a full meal.
I think he may have picked at the meal. He was not himself.
I didn't ask you about how he was. I asked
He
you,
may
did he or
have picked up
not?
the meal. They served him a meal.
Okay, they served meal. You indicated that, I believe that there was some alcohol ordered, correct?
I'm talking about the daiquiris. Is that what you're
Yes.
referring to?
Yes. There was some alcohol ordered, correct?
Yes.
As I understand your testimony, you indicated that there were 2 drinks, 2 daiquiris ordered, a ginger ale, which I think you said sounds like me,
That's me.
and a Diet Coke, correct?
Right.
And the Diet Coke, that's Phil.
Yes.
You do not know, as you sit here now, how much of those daiquiris Phil drank that night, do you?
I think I know that he finished the first one. I don't remember about the second one, but I believe that he drank them both.
Okay. Do you recall being interviewed on February 10th, 2003 at about 10:30 in the morning in the presence of your son, Todd Davis, by 2 Los Angeles County Sheriff's investigators, Officer Fournier and Officer Tomlin?
Yes.
Do you remember them asking you the question of whether or not you and Mr. Spector had consumed any alcoholic drinks with dinner?
I don't remember them asking me the question.
Okay, Your Honor, with the court's, if I should, well, let me ask you this. I have a copy of the report of the interview with you. If I show you this report, might it refresh your memory if you read that particular part?
I don't know. I'll look at it. Pardon?
Would you take a look at it?
Yes, of course.
All right, you may approach.
For the record, Your Honor, I'm going to show her pagination page 000165 and 166.
All right.
Okay. We have a procedure in here. It's probably a little different than what you're used to, okay? So I'm going to ask you to just kind of follow my instructions so we do it right together.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to show you the first page, which is page 165, and I'm going to ask you just to read the first paragraph, just to orient yourself to recall that you were interviewed, okay? Just read it to yourself. Don't read it out loud. All right. And now I'm going to ask you to read, if you would, to yourself. You may take this, page 166, and I just want you to read the first 2 lines of the top paragraph on the page. Have you read that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes, I read it.
Okay. You can't say and that doesn't come out
Okay,
of it.
sorry.
That's all right. And you now recall that the investigators asked you if you and Mr. Spector had consumed alcoholic drinks with dinner? You do, don't you?
I really don't. I don't remember them asking me the question, and I don't remember my son telling. I know I don't remember.
Okay. Do you have any quarrel that what's reported here and recorded here in this police report is inaccurate in any way?
Well, that would ask her to speculate, John.
Given her prior answer, I would agree. She's indicated she doesn't have the memory, so the objection is sustained.
So you have no recollection of them asking you that question or you providing an answer that you didn't know?
No, I have no recollection. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you recall telling the officers when they interviewed you that you may have had a glass of Merlot and Mr. Spector may have had a daiquiri to drink with dinner? Do you remember telling them that?
No, I don't remember telling them that.
Do Do you remember telling the officers that neither you nor Mr. Spector was drunk that Sunday evening?
I don't recall telling them that. I don't recall the whole conversation, but I know that that sounds like something I would say.
Okay. You weren't drunk that evening, were you?
I've never been drunk in my life.
Well, I'm just asking you about that evening, okay? You don't want to open that door, all right? You weren't drunk that evening, were you?
Absolutely not.
And Philip was not drunk that evening, was he?
Absolutely not.
At least objection, at least to
Wait.
the extent that she was with him that.
Stay.
Obviously.
Well, there's,
The
I'll
time
sustain
that-
the objection. If you want to re-ask it, you may. If not, you can move along.
Let me, no, ma'am. Yeah, you can't talk
Okay.
unless we pose a question.
Okay.
It's just kind of the rules of the game. Ms. Davis, you were with Mr. Spector for 2-3 hours that evening, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Once again, he was not drunk, was he? During the time you were with him?
I'm having difficulty answering the question. All I can tell you is that, to me, and I'm not an expert in alcoholism, his behavior was not what his behavior had been on other occasions. So therefore, my observation is, yes, he must have been drunk.
Do you remember telling Detective Fournier and Detective Tomlin on February 10th, 2003 at 10:30 in the morning the following? Davis said that neither she nor Spector were drunk Sunday evening. Do you remember making that statement?
Well,
Just-
I could
just-
certainly have said I
No,
wasn't.
it's not what you assumed. You-
Just, well, she needs to be responded. Do you recall making that statement to the officers when they interviewed you?
No, I don't recall that.
If I showed it to you in the page of 166, page number 166, might it refresh your memory?
I saw the page, so what can I say?
Well, you didn't read that part. If I showed you this part on the page and asked you to read it, might it refresh your memory? That's all I'm asking.
Objection, no foundation that she needs her memory refreshed.
Well, she's indicated she doesn't
I
remember
really
saying
don't
that.
remember what I said to them, so I'm trying to help you, but I really don't remember.
That's why I'm asking you, if you look at the report, might it refresh your memory as to what you said?
Okay, I'll look at the report.
You may approach.
I'm going to address again your 000166 for the record.
All right.
First paragraph, just take a look at the sentence I'm pointing to where it says Davis and just read it to yourself. Have you read that one sentence?
Yes,
Does that now refresh your memory that you told the two case agents in this case that neither you nor Mr. Spector were drunk Sunday evening?
I think there's a fine line, and because I'm not, I don't know how to answer it. In my opinion, I'm not an expert on alcoholism and what constitutes drunk.
Ms.
So
Davis.
I answered it that way when they asked me the question,
Ms. Davis, that was your answer, correct?
obviously.
She just explained why she gave that answer, so that's now.
That's why I said what I said.
All right, the question's been answered. You
Let
may
me
ask
ask
the
you-
next question.
Have you talked to other people in this case on the government side, other than the interview that you gave on February 10th, 2003, before you came here to court today to testify? You did, didn't you? You've been interviewed. Have you been interviewed by Mr. Dixon or Mr. Jackson, these two gentlemen in front of
Yes,
you?
yes.
How many times?
No, I haven't been interviewed by them.
You've never spoken with Mr. Dixon or Mr. Jackson, these are the two prosecutors in this case, about your testimony? Never.
No, just hello when I met them in the building.
Have you spoken with anybody since February 10th of 2003 and today about your testimony?
To anybody meaning
To
who?
anybody on the government side, anybody in the district attorney's office, anybody in the sheriff's department, anybody in Alhambra PD, anybody in law enforcement?
I don't recall talking to anybody.
You may have, you just don't recall.
I don't recall.
All right, let's talk a little bit further if we may. You knew that Philip took medication, correct?
Yes,
and you knew that he took medication for various illnesses that he's been diagnosed with by a doctor, correct?
Yes, I do.
You've seen him take medication.
Yes, I know, yes.
Okay. And as I understand it, you stated you were concerned because of the combination of the alcohol and the medication together, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Would it be a fair statement to say you were concerned about what the combination would do to him physically, correct? You didn't want him to have a heart attack. You didn't want him to wind up having some sort of internal problem where he would wind up having to go to the hospital. Isn't that a fair statement?
Jackson, that's compound.
It is, but I'll allow her to answer it. You may answer.
Yes, but it had dual complications, one what it did to him and what it did to his behavior. So I was concerned in that manner.
Let me ask you something. You were at the grill, which is a public place, correct?
Yes,
You were eating dinner at the grill for a couple of hours, correct?
yes.
Did anybody, nobody from the grill, no employee from the grill came over to your table other than to serve you food and to attend to you as customers, correct?
Somebody may have stopped by to say something. I don't remember for sure. I think a friend may have stopped by.
Okay, a friend may have stopped by with salutations, correct?
Yes,
No
Yes.
one employed by the grill came over and said, Mr. Spector, you have to leave now. Your conduct is outrageous. Get out of here. Nobody did that.
absolutely not when I was there.
Well, you were there with him, weren't you? You weren't there with anybody else, right, Ms. Davis?
Jackson, there's no need to raise.
You're getting,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think you need to back down. Thank you.
I went to the ladies' room.
How long were you gone? For a couple of minutes, right?
Right.
Okay. And after you came back from the ladies' room, you sat back down with Philip, correct?
Yes, but
That's all I asked. You never that evening got up during the course of the dinner and left, did you?
no,
You never asked somebody to call the police to come in because of his outrageous conduct, did you?
absolutely no.
Okay. And ultimately, he took you home back to your residence in Studio City over the hill, correct?
Yes,
Ms. Davis, you were interviewed on February 10th, 2003, correct?
I guess that's correct, yes.
By the way, you didn't know Lana Clarkson, did you?
No, I did not.
Never heard Phil mention her name, did you?
No, I did not.
Never heard him speak about her, did you?
No, I did not.
When you interviewed them, that was when you were interviewed by them, by Mr. Tomlin, by Mr. Fournier. This was approximately a week after the incident involving Ms. Clarkson. Isn't that correct?
I think so. That's reasonable.
And therefore, that Sunday night was much fresher in your mind, correct? It was closer to the evening than it is today, correct?
Yes,
And at that time, they asked you, how did Mr. Spector treat you? And do you recall telling them the following, that he always treated you very nice, he always behaved like a gentleman, and he was a very caring person? Do you recall in that interview describing Phil Spector in that way? Always treated you very nice, always was a gentleman, and always was a very caring person. Yes or no?
that is absolutely correct.
And you told him that, didn't you?
Yes,
When you talked to them, they asked you to be truthful and honest and tell them everything you knew, correct?
yes,
And you did, correct?
yes.
Ms. Davis, you did not mention to them anything about being concerned and admonishing Philip because he ordered a drink or two drinks with you and took his medication. You told him nothing about that, did you?
Yes, that's correct.
Never mentioned it to him, did you?
No, I didn't mention it.
It's the first time you're mentioning this is here today in court. Isn't that true?
Yes, that's true.
You cannot sit there and say with any degree of certainty whether or not Philip had any of the second daiquiri that was ordered, right?
Jackson already admitted they asked and answered.
I'll allow it.
Which you may answer. Is that correct?
I believe he drank some of it. I don't know,
You don't.
as I watched every drop that he drank.
I'm sorry, I didn't finish. What you are, in your mind, sure about is that he did have the first drink, the daiquiri. That you're sure about.
Yes,
And the Diet Coke, he finished that too?
yes,
So if I understand it correctly, the only thing that you can tell us for sure that you're positive about is that over this 2.5-hour period at this restaurant, you and Philip shared and consumed a full meal, and he had one daiquiri and one Diet Coke. That you're certain about, correct?
no, I would say that I saw him drink some of the second drink. I
You
was
don't know
at the
how much?
table. I don't know how much.
Okay. And that's over a 2.5-hour period, correct?
Yes, correct, reasonable.
Court's indulgence for a moment, please.
Certain?
Phil has a habit, Mr. Spector has a habit, doesn't he, that sometimes he orders more when you go out to eat than is consumed, correct? He likes to try things and taste things, isn't that correct?
Yes,
It's not an uncommon part of going out with Phil when you go to a restaurant. He might order 3, 4, 5 different things, take a little taste and not finish it, correct?
I personally did not see him order 3, 4, 5 things, but so I can't speak to that.
Okay, I'm not talking about that particular evening. I'm talking about any of the evenings you've been out with him.
That did not occur with us.
Okay. You indicated that there was a conversation that occurred regarding Philip indicating to you that there was a gun in the trunk of the vehicle, correct?
In the very beginning, in the summer.
Okay. Do you remember the date of when he told you that? Do
No, I couldn't.
you remember where you were when he told you that?
Driving on the freeway.
And I think as I understood it, you thought that that was very kind of him and very nice of him to inform you of that so you would not feel uncomfortable, correct?
Yes,
And he gave you the option. He said, if you're uncomfortable with that, you don't have to ride in the car with me, correct?
yes,
And you thanked him for that, didn't you?
yes,
And you commented to him how you thought that was very gentlemanly of him and very kind of him to inform you of that so that you wouldn't be put in an uncompromising
yes,
position.
exactly correct.
Ms. Davis, how many times do you think, after you saw him at the Fairfax High reunion, until the last time you went out with him, which I'm assuming was the evening of February 3rd of '03, how many times do you think you had been out with him? Is there any way you can estimate for us?
So we're talking maybe 5 months, and I was out of town sometimes, and he was out of town.
Right.
So maybe 3, 4 times a month, maybe more. I'd have to sit down and really calculate numbers.
Okay, maybe somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 times?
That's reasonable.
On all those occasions, you never saw him in the possession of a hand weapon, did you?
Never,
And he never threatened you with a hand weapon?
never.
Philip is right-handed, isn't he?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Okay. May I have the court's indulgence for a moment,
Yes.
please? Ms. Davis, just a couple of other quick questions. Do you recall being interviewed about a month and a half ago by a deputy district attorney named Ocampo and a detective Tomlin?
Yes, yes, I do.
So you do recall that?
Well, I remember that they interviewed me, yes.
So between the first interview which was 7 days, it was February 10th, February 11th of 2003. And today, you in fact have been interviewed by another set of individuals, a deputy district attorney like Mr. Jackson and Mr. Dixon, and a Detective Tomlin, correct?
Yes,
And
that's
that was
correct.
and that was as recently as about 4 or 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Where'd they interview you?
Where?
Yes.
At a restaurant in the neighborhood,
You say the neighborhood in Studio City?
in Studio
Okay,
City.
yeah, I don't want to know where the restaurant was. And how long was the interview?
30 minutes, 45 minutes.
And in that interview, you adopted everything you told them in the first interview that you had with investigators Fournier and Tomlin, because they went over that with you. You said, yeah, that's all correct. There's nothing wrong. You said that, didn't you, in the discussions at the restaurant with Mr. Ocampo and Mr. Tomlin, right? I'm asking.
Jeez, I'll allow the question. Is that true or not?
Is what true?
Is it true? Let's take it and break the question down. You had an interview a month and a half ago with a deputy district attorney named Ocampo, who's working on the prosecution team with Mr. Jackson and Mr. Dixon, and a detective Tomlin, correct?
Yes,
You had this interview at a restaurant in the neighborhood, correct?
yes,
At that time, they had the report of the interview with you and Detectives Fournier and Tomlin from February 10th of 2003, correct?
I do not remember the report per se.
Do you recall them reading from a paper and indicating to you that they were going to go over the material on the report from the interview that you had in 2003 to determine whether it was all correct or not? And you said, yes, all of that is correct. Do you remember?
Yes,
So my question is, you reaffirmed for them, Mr. Ocampo, Mr. Tomlin, a month and a half ago, that everything that they went over in the original report was correct. That's all I'm asking, correct?
yes, I'll say yes to that.
Thank you very much, Mayor. That's all.
Thank you. Redirect.
No, thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Subject to recall, or you're excused. Thank you for being here. You're not to discuss your testimony with anyone except the attorneys in the case.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You may step down. And we'll be in recess until 1:30. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, keep in mind the admonition. We'll see you at 1:30 this afternoon.
Okay, guys. That's it for today. I was going to stream later today, but I am not feeling well, so I'm going to go back to bed. I will be here in the morning, and I will reschedule what I was going to do this afternoon for a different time. So I'm sorry about that, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Have a good day. Make good choices. Jesus loves you. I do too. Bye.